Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jacob Silverman, staff writer at the New Republic, author of the upcoming book, Easy Money, co-written with Ben McKenzie on the golden era of crypto scams. Meanwhile, day 3 of the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings, Republicans have gone full QAnon. Joe Biden in Europe, seeking new sanctions, may announce a permanent troop increase in Eastern Europe. Great. The Russian assault seemingly stalled. And as the deal gets closer, Senate hawks look to scuttle the Iranian nuke pact. In Utah, the governor vetoes a transgender bill. Oklahoma, their state house has passed a near complete ban of abortions. If it passes the Senate and inevitably gets signed by its governor, it will be the most restrictive ban on abortions in the country. This is just beginning, folks. U.S.-UK trade deal will end tariffs on UK steel and aluminum and on U.S. whiskey, motorcycles, and tobacco.
Party on.
Despite the U.S. starving the Afghan people, Taliban essentially cancels girls' high school's education. U.S. vax rates stall as Omicron BA2 starts to grow. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is Emma Viglin's favorite day. Emma? It's a catchphrase. You got to go with your catchphrase.
It's hump day.
Yep, it is. Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks for coining that phrase and reminding us of it. So there you go.
It's a good metaphor.
Great.
Yep.
It is, in other words, like we're on the back end of the week, as it
Cresting.
were. Yep. And so we only have 2 more days after this. It's 5 days in a week. This
In
is
fact,
the 3rd day.
it's actually not hump day because we are working on Saturday.
Well, for us this week, that's true. And just a reminder, if you go to Majority Live and, if you go to Majority Live, you can get tickets to the Boston show, which I thought would not sell out. But it's starting to look like it very well may.
Wow.
Now,
It's
in
venue.
May. It's a
Yeah.
much bigger venue. It's 3 times the size. No, well, yeah, almost. Yeah, actually, it's exactly 3 times the size in Boston. I figured that would not sell out. It's not until May. But if you want to get tickets for it, you get 6 weeks. But it could sell out.
You might not have 6 weeks.
You may not have 6 weeks. If you want to, the Brooklyn show is obviously sold out. But if you want to watch the Brooklyn show, you have 2 choices. You can go to Majority Live. You click through. You can go as if you're buying tickets and then buy the live streaming event. Or you just sign up for the AM Quickie, which 500 people have already taken advantage of this discount. So I can't quite tell if that's a good business move on my part or bad business move because it's over 50% savings
it's a
on
good
your streaming.
business.
The cost was them doing the AM Quickie,
Yeah, they sign up for the AM Quickie.
which is a good it's a good little thing in the morning.
Yeah, it's a great
I
thing.
love
but
the
we
AM
haven't figured
Quickie.
out how to monetize that yet.
Oh, well, yeah.
Anyways, the point is go to amquickie.com. You will have the opportunity to
The point is that you get them hooked and then you start charging them.
actually that is sort of actually what I've been thinking. is
Yeah,
we're
yours
gonna do.
a weird camera thing you're doing today.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we
Well,
go.
there you go.
All
I
right,
fixed it.
okay. Got it.
So go to amquickie.com. The next day you will get the AM Quickie in your mailbox, your email box, and then you will be able to get a 50% discount on the AM Quickie. There you go. Yeah. All right, let's get into this. There's basically the story of these hearings appears to be, and I don't know that this, frankly, is what Mitch McConnell would have wanted, but it is.
There's no way he wants this.
I would be very surprised because there's first off, I would be very surprised if Ketanji Brown Jackson does not get confirmed at this point. But Josh Hawley, he's got a future in the Republican Party as far as he's concerned. Tom Cotton has his lane. Marsha Blackburn has her lane. And
I don't know about Blackburn, but I would guess that Cotton and Hawley are running in 2024. I would guess.
Well, I think these guys, they plan to and wait and see. They want the opportunity to put themselves in the position to do it.
Unless Trump runs, then maybe they'll.
And I'm not convinced that Blackburn is not thinking about vice president.
Yeah.
So, and what you have is essentially two strains of Republican lines of attack that are essentially self-reinforcing for their lunatic. I've seen it described as the fringe and the base. There is no such thing as the fringe in the Republican Party. It is the base. And the base is broad-based to the extent that there's a base there, it is broad. And that is they're lunatics. And it ranges from Cotton and Graham trying to argue that she is soft on crime. And then for those who want to know what crime, you have Hawley and Blackburn who are basically saying some type of, you're soft on pedophilia and all that mishmash that goes into pedophilia with them, which includes like transgenderism and gay people and anything that deals with like anything that inhibits, because again, the right-wing fixation on pedophilia stems from years ago when essentially women were able to leave the home to go and work. And kids needed daycare. Mm-hmm. And during the 80s, we had all these scares of pedophiles running and Satanists running daycare centers. And so this all ties back to essentially the same sort of like Christian fundamentalist version.
You can also tie CRT into that as well, because when, if the mom's not at home, they're going to be indoctrinating your kids in the schools, right? That's where they're going to get their primary child rearing. So that's part of the not so subtle dog whistle that the GOP
they've also got a nod to that because it's a black woman.
Yeah.
But let's later in the program, we will sort of cover that end of the spectrum. But let's just start with this. Lindsey Graham, again, he's not, some reason he's not as gung-ho to enter into that world of sexuality that the Republicans have a problem with. I can't imagine why that would be, but he is going for the soft on crime, which of course is, how am I going to show like I'm a tough guy? And I know it's going to center around Club Gitmo.
Congressman Jim Clyburn was a strong supporter of Michelle Childs and supporting your nomination. And Michelle Childs has been nominated by President Biden to be a circuit judge, and she will be considered by this committee as quickly as possible. On the issue of Guantanamo, there are currently 39 Guantanamo detainees remaining. The annual budget for Guantanamo is $540 million per year. which means each of these detainees is being held at the expense of $12 or $13 million per year. If they would be incarcerated at Florence, Colorado, the Supermax prison, federal prison, the amount would be dramatically less. Since 9/11, nearly 1,000 convicted in the United States on terrorism charges. Since 2009, with the beginning of the Obama administration, the recidivism rate of the Guantanamo detainees released is 5%.
Mr. Chairman, according to the Department Director of National Intelligence, is 31%. Somebody is wrong here. If you're going to talk about what I said, I'm going to respond to what you said. If we close Gitmo and move them to Colorado, do you support indefinite detention under the law of war for these detainees?
I would just say I'm giving the facts. And
the answer is no.
I want to make sure that it's clear. The 31% you referred to goes back to the year 2009. 2000.
What does it matter when it goes back to? We had them and they got loose and they started killing people.
Well, I could just say that
if you're one of the people killed in 2005, does it matter to you when we release them?
Suggest that a president of your own party released them in.
I'm suggesting the system has failed miserably, and advocates to change this system, like she was advocating, would destroy our ability to protect this country. We're at war. We're not fighting a crime. This is not some passage of time event. As long as they're dangerous, I hope they all die in jail if they're going to go back and kill Americans. It won't bother me one bit if 39 of them die in prison. That's a better outcome than letting them go. And if it costs $500 million to keep them in jail, keep them in jail, because they're going to go back to the fight. Look at the friggin' Afghan government. It's made up of former detainees at Gitmo. This whole thing by the left about this war ain't working.
Let me also note that Larry Thompson, who served as Deputy Attorney General under President George W. Bush, Oren Kerr, Special Counsel, Viet Den, who served as Assistant Attorney General for Legal Policy in the George W. Bush administration, John Bellinger.
If you're just listening, Lindsey Graham walked off in a huff there. Of those 39 that are still in Guantanamo Bay, 27 have not even been charged. 14 have been cleared to be released. This is
but you can't release them because we're at war.
We can't release them
always
because
at
war. And we have literally driven these people insane.
Yeah.
With torture. The 12 that are still awaiting trial, that have been charged, can barely be tried because we tortured so many of them that we can't even hold a trial.
Well, was that the Guardian piece from the other day? Was that about Gitmo, the detainee who was used as a basic
he was used as a
test,
trainee,
trainee
prop to be taught how to torture people.
They banged his head against the wall so many times that he has significant brain damage,
and just
among other torture techniques.
To the practicalities of keeping us safe, the idea that Gitmo doesn't create more anti-American violent sentiment than allowing these people some sort of
Lindsey Graham sat idly by while the president he supported denied the existence of a pandemic that has taken the lives of 1 million people in this country. There is no way in 1 million years, the number of people we have released from Guantanamo Bay are responsible for the deaths of Americans like the former president of this country who convinced half the nation that COVID was a hoax. So if we're really concerned about American lives, apparently we can spend hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, I think that's the hundreds of millions of dollars. Sure. Yes, that is a problem, but it's also just an abomination. It's just a moral abomination. And it makes a mockery of the Constitution that these people preen about. And so, there's Lindsey Graham's little, performance art.
Yeah, I mean, she was Ketanji Brown Jackson was sitting there can I go? I mean, she didn't say one word in that.
No.
This is...
And apparently he was talking all over her just 10 minutes ago in the, during the hearings.
This
because
is
this is his preening. This is the way that he establishes maybe getting a little soft on Trump, and he's got to make sure he doesn't get that primary in South Carolina, and this is part of the way that he does it. But
he had success at Kavanaugh. He wants to play the hits now.
Yep, there you go. All right, in a moment we'll be talking to Jacob Silverman, staff writer at New Republic. He's got a new book that is upcoming, Easy Money. It's co-written with Ben McKenzie, who I've been told was on a television program that I'd never heard of, so apologies. But it on crypto, and this is a particularly, I guess, opportune moment to scam people. But before we get there, couple of words from our sponsors today. As you know, recent IPCC report came out. I mean, horrible news, not good. Antarctica, 70 degrees warmer than ever been.
Oy.
That's bad in Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Yep. Our own individual actions are not going to solve climate change, but it is a part of the solution. And that means that for some of us who own homes, we can go solar. Solar consultant who has been a longtime listener to this program, he used to work in the solar industry, felt like some of this was a little bit predatory, and that homeowners didn't really have a sense of what they were doing. He's become a consultant, and if you're a homeowner, you may have considered solar, but of course, you don't know where to start. A lot of homeowners don't realize that there are solar options currently available for them, that there's also a solar investor tax credit, which is going to get reduced from 26% down to 22% next year. So now is the time to do this. You can also now retrofit a home with solar panels, in many instances with no money down. So my Solar Nerd's mission is is simple. And it's to help you find the best solar program for your home and make the transition as easy and smooth as possible. The way they do it, they analyze your usage, they find the best equipment for your needs, they determine the incentives and financing you qualify for, then they project manage between you and the installers, obtain permits, et cetera, et cetera. Look, do this now. Some of the tax credits and incentives are going to be sunsetting. The 26% tax credit drops down to 22% next year. If you finish the project by the end of this year, you qualify for the 26% tax credit. So there's still plenty of time. Some markets that are prone to power outages, you may qualify for off-grid backup solutions. So My Solar Nerd comes in, they handle all of these questions that you have, and they oversee the process. Majority Report listeners are going to get a $200 gift card upon installation of their solar system. So check it out. Go to mysolarnerd.com, mysolarnerd.com. Fill out the inquiry form now. Make sure you select Majority Report listener for how you heard about My Solar Nerd. Receive $200 gift card upon installation. Also, it's back, Emma.
No.
Yep.
No.
2022. We have high-speed internet. You have celebrities going to space. You got electric cars. And yet, what is the one thing that most people are still doing like they did literally centuries ago? Yes, that's right. And how do you stop doing it that way and move into the future? Hello Tushy bidets.
Right.
Yep. Oh my God.
Read it.
Because smearing your business around with toilet paper is so 100 years ago.
Oh, it's worse than I thought.
Yep. They go all in. But I will say this, folks, once you go bidet, you don't go back.
Don't go bedack.
You don't go bedack. The Hello Tushy bidet attachment washes your bum with fresh water for a way better clean than toilet paper. Think about it for 1 minute about how you wash your hands. You don't do it with a dry piece of paper for a reason. You simply spray and pat dry. It attaches to your existing toilet. There is no electrician or plumber needed. It is super easy. If you can change your toilet seat, you can do this. Installs in less than 8 minutes. and it cuts down your toilet paper use by 80%. Saves you money, saves paper waste, and it is just a revelation. Hello Tushy has cleaned over 1 million happy bums. I want all our listeners to have clean bums, as you know. You can visit hellotushy.com/majority to get 10% off plus free shipping right now. That's hellotushy.com/majority. You get 10% off, and tag Hello Tushy on social media so they can celebrate your clean bum with you. Do not post explicit pictures, please. We will put links to both those in our podcast and YouTube descriptions. Check it out. All right, want to take a quick break. Forgot we got to do that. And when we come back, Jacob Silverman, staff writer at the New Republic, author of the upcoming book, Easy Money, co-written with Ben McKenzie. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Jacob Silverman, staff writer at the New Republic, author of the upcoming book, Easy Money, co-written with Ben McKenzie. Jacob, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland. I had to concede that I didn't know who Ben McKenzie was, and I had never seen the OC, but this happens with just about any cultural reference that we have. Emma has corrected or at least updated me. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
All right, let's I want to give us a sense of like where we are with crypto, and then I'm going to ask you to explain NFTs because I still don't quite fully get it. I think, but like, where are we in terms of just like there seems to be hundreds of cryptocurrencies, and every day there are new ones. Mm-hmm. Where are we in that? You know, as in that measure of cryptos.
Right. Well, we're sort of in the biggest phase that crypto's ever seen, the biggest boom. I think a lot of people, even within the industry, wouldn't deny that there's some kind of bubble here. There are over 18,000 cryptocurrencies. Of course, maybe only 100, or depending on who you ask, 2 or 3 might be really of consequence, but and a lot of them are worth near zero. But it's still a big time for the industry. There's hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, of venture capital flowing in. You have VCs mostly, like Andreessen Horowitz or some Paradigm, some of these other associated venture capitalists. There's still an era of easy money, as we call our book. Things might change a little bit with with the increase in interest rates that seems to be ongoing.
Wait, before we get to that part about the easy money, like so what are they investing in? I mean, this is the thing, like, are they like, because I mean, and I think, people who listen to this program on a consistent basis know that I just perceive it as, one step up from tulips. Like, these are essentially digital baseball cards as far as I'm concerned. But what is it that you're investing in? Are VC just coming in and saying, like, we're just going to buy a bunch of this and hope that it just goes up? Or are they actively like building some mechanism to increase its value?
Well, I think that gets at some key issues here, which is that, so you'll have a VC come in, for example, yesterday, Yuga Labs, the company behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club, the biggest NFT collection, which is sort of a proliferating brand. Right. They got a bunch of VC money for the company that distributes and produces the NFT collections. And they got money from Andreessen Horowitz and some of the other big VCs. So that's, you'll see investments in some of these companies that are creating currencies. Sometimes they're very small organizations, or creating NFTs, and they're all promising kind of a proliferation of different forms of IP, like a cartoon and a video game and all these things, all of it supposedly interoperable. Whether we ever see those things, I have real doubts. The reason why you have very rich venture capitalists and other moneyed interests who want to pour money into this stuff is because, and again, I'm going to often go back to Andreessen Horowitz, which is sort of the dominant player here, but they say you can get, instead of just traditional equity in a company, you can get tokens. So, for example, Yuga Labs has a token which they unveiled last week. And if you bought equity in the company, I'm not saying this is happening in this specific case, but it does happen. Companies like, or the venture capitalists get tokens. So instead of stock options, they can unload those tokens whenever the initial coin offering happens, which is usually a matter of months rather than a matter of years for a stock offering. So in a lot of ways, it's a way to kind of get around securities regulations and obtain an interest in these companies and then pump and dump at the proper time.
Okay, so by token, I mean it's like a one unit of their currency or something, or units of their currency. Is that it?
Exactly. Coins, tokens, cryptocurrencies, generally the same thing.
What? Like, okay, so I go and there's somebody says to me, I have $100 million because of all this, and somebody says, like, I'm starting a crypto the currency, and this is I don't know what differentiates it. Maybe you can tell us on that. But what the pitch is, I need an investment of $20 million. Okay, here's the $20 million. What does the $20 million do? Like, I mean, is it buying a bunch of computers, or is it just like a marketing thing, or like what is? I understand the idea, like, oh, you're going to give me, we're going to create value here. You're going to give me one of those. I'm going to be able to dump it later. But what does that money do when it goes in there?
Right. Well, there's very little productive value in this whole system, in this economy. A lot of it's built on sort of hype and shared delusion, because these cryptocurrencies and the companies behind them don't necessarily do a lot of things beyond even just have the tokens. So to think that all this could sink to zero or just become a series 18,000 penny stocks is not unreasonable, I think. But there are also a couple ways in which the money comes in. So you have a venture capital infusion, perhaps, but where does that money go? It either goes into marketing or it goes into the pockets of the owners. I mean, so much of the expenditure, such as it is in this industry, is around marketing. Get the celebrity endorsements, the social media campaigns. Mm-hmm. There's also darker stuff going on at some of these companies with basically buying bots on Discord and Telegram and other popular social media networks. There are fees that are paid to the exchanges to list your coin, and sometimes people pay companies to trade in their coin to increase volume. So there's that kind of stuff going on. But you're right that in terms of where the money goes, it's a little bit of a black box, but also it mostly goes into kind of keeping the froth and the hype going.
Also, for celebrities, it's a way for them to commodify their like current fame quadrant or fame unit, right? And for basically the pyramid scheme that is these crypto people, it's a way to get more people to buy it. So the people that initially have bought the cryptocurrency, have the bulk of it, the value of their currency is inflated. Is that an accurate assessment?
Absolutely. There are two things going on there. One is that the industry always needs more fiat, more regular dollars or euros or whatever coming in the door because everyone always wants to get back to fiat. That's what you can buy stuff with. You can't really buy much with crypto. And you have to pay the bills usually in fiat. And then the other thing is the greater fool theory, as it's called, which is just that one of these things is worth as much as you can sell it for the next to the next fool for. Excuse me. So there's not a lot of inherent value here. There's not a lot of sustainable value being created. It's really about, okay, I own ApeCoin at $12 now. Hopefully I can sell it tomorrow for 15.
So, all right. So before we move off this sort of specific aspect of it, I'm still sort of amazed by this because it sounds like the entire investment is just for marketing. And it is literally just sort of like, we're just going to create a concept that is just a digital marker, essentially. So have you seen like a prospectus? Like, I mean, are there crypto enterprises out there with a prospectus and walking into the door of these VC offices or whatever it is and saying like, this is what I have? Like, I'm just fascinated as to what it is that they're selling. Like, how is me, venture capital, all this, how do I determine that like this person walking in versus that person walking in and they both want me to invest in their crypto? How do I make the determination which one sounds sexier? I mean, and I'm not being facetious about
Sure.
Have you seen a prospectus?
Well, a lot of these companies will publicly display what they call roadmaps, or they'll have a white paper that's sort of more technical explanation of perhaps their token and what they're up to, or the tokenomics, as it's called, because their token might then be tied into sort of other financial protocols and other crypto protocols, and but a lot of it is based on sort of future promises. We're going to have a game. The NFT is going to provide you with real world experiences. You're going to have access to X celebrity or something like that. There are things like NFT games or other kind of crypto economies out there, but most of it is just a promise of future worth or future access that very well may never appear. At least that's sort of the promise sold to customers. As for VCs, I think one criticism you hear a lot in this industry is that there is very little incentive for venture capitalists to try to help nurture and create sustainable businesses in Web3 or crypto, no matter what you think of venture capitalists. Their main motivation, of course, is to make more money. So if their main, I'd say, rubric or criteria is probably, is this token going to go up? Do they have good marketing? And when can I cash out? So I think those are some of the core questions that they ask themselves when they're considering, A or B.
When you talk about the promises made for people basically buying crypto, normies or whatever, right? Like, it's fairly indistinguishable from a modern scam artist. Like, I read your piece in the New Republic where you talk about the Fire Fest. I mean, this sounds like what Billy McFarland said when he was selling that fake Magnesis, that credit card, to a bunch of his of people who wanted early access to celebrities. I mean, there's like a deep, I kind of want to table that and come back to that because that says something psychologically about the generation that we're in, I think. But I was hoping that we could back up to really the origins of crypto and how it started. Because I remember Silk Road. I remember like a lot of conversations about how cryptocurrency, I didn't fully understand it then, but a lot of that, it seemed like it was a way for illicit goods and services to move through undetected. And now that technology is being used and has exploded. And traditionally, buttoned up organizations, venture capital firms are investing in it now. So just take us to the beginning there. And I also want to ask you about Bitcoin a little more specifically as well.
Sure. I believe the Bitcoin white paper came out in October 2008. I mean, some people portray it as a response to the financial crisis. And I think certainly in how crypto in general beyond Bitcoin has developed, and some of the things that you hear about, the big banks have failed us and things like that, is sort of grafted on to the crypto narrative. From what I understand, the original white paper may have been more about some libertarian ideas of finding kind of a peer-to-peer cash and payment method that didn't involve the government. I think it also had a lot to do with gambling and helping, because a lot of people in early Bitcoin came out of the world of online gambling and poker. And you see that also in the present day crypto companies. A lot of these people have experience in online poker or gambling, and you can understand why. The market sort of limped along for a few years, really until 2017 was the first real big bubble. I mean, there's some milestones before. Silk Road is definitely important. As someone told me, there's one reason why Bitcoin has some very ardent defenders, besides the sort of ideology they see in it, is because a number of people got onboarded basically chasing the high of drugs or having the excitement of using it to obtain drugs. So there's a certain kind of thrill seeking, I think, and illicit aspect to it almost built in there from the beginning. But 2017, 2018 is when you had this explosion of coin offerings after the advent of Ethereum and other blockchains. And that's when you have celebrities start getting involved, celebrities start getting in trouble with the SEC, occasional enforcement. But then what you have now is there's infinite more variety of coins and protocols and things like that. And the whole market is notionally worth about 1.8 or 1.9 trillion. And again, if people really try to cash out, I think you'd find that number be a lot less. But that's what it's being touted as right now. So it's the biggest it's ever been, but at the same time, the actual use cases, I would argue, are still very few, if any.
Is there an algorithm, like I assume, like if it's worth do we know how much? Okay, if it's worth $1.9 trillion, let's say, or 1.5 or whatever it is, the value of it is now. Do we know how much actual real money went in to create that now ostensible value? And then I also wonder if 1.9 trillion is reflective of, let's say, I don't know, $100 billion that went in, that has been invested in, or whatever number it is, or maybe it's just like 500 million of actual cash. And it just created this value essentially as people started to see, or I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know how to, I guess there's probably a lot more than 500 million in there, right? Because it has attracted so much investment, people buying into this. But do we know what the relationship is between the actual cash that has been invested and what is on paper? And then do we have a sense of, for every dollar that is taken out, if there was to be sort of a run on this, like what would be the rate in which that deflates?
Right. So I think those are great questions. We don't know the precise answers, but I have some ideas. I mean, Ben and I have talked to folks from in the industry who have proposed that maybe there's only sort of 10% real cash in the system. Of course, I think that refers more to perhaps how much has gone in, but certainly there's a huge disconnect both between the on paper sort of digital value, the $1.8 trillion market cap of all currencies, and however much real money has flowed in. If you consider Bitcoin is over 40%, I believe, of that market cap. A lot of the fiat that flows into the system is really just to pay miners' electrical bills, or you have these crypto companies that raise venture capital and then probably waste it on marketing. But in terms of cashing out, that's an open question. And I think if there's a crash, which certain macroeconomic factors and law enforcement and other things could contribute to one, I think this year, then you could have sort of proverbial bank runs on some of the big coins. Exchanges might shut down or might not be able to process the volume of transactions. A lot of sort of strange knock-on effects, but basically the equivalent of a digital bank run. And I think the amount of money that people would actually get out would be a fraction of that. We're talking 1% or something. I just don't see people being able to cash out quickly and as a large group. Even recently, some of the stories about Russian oligarchs trying to take money, crypto money out of Russia, there's certainly some success at that, but there are also stories about they can't because there's not enough liquidity in these markets. So if you want to cash out $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, as supposedly some oligarchs want to do, you have to have a very generous sort of connection in Abu Dhabi or Switzerland to actually do that, but it's unlikely that that can even be done. So this question of liquidity, I think, also matters.
Also, then that it just totally undercuts the democratizing element, right? Like, if you want to cash out, you got to be connected to this wealthy person. But like you mentioned the electricity, we cut out for a second there. You mentioned the electricity and how people don't necessarily realize how environmentally harmful mining Bitcoin is. But I'm also really fascinated by the inefficiency in the technology in and of itself, because my understanding is that Bitcoin can only process like something that was some finite number of transactions per second, and it clogs up the transaction system. So people will try to sell Bitcoin and it doesn't go through. Or, I mean, because this was initially created for the purposes that you outlined earlier, there is a lot of not just inefficiency, but incompetence in terms of the way that the actual mining is done and the trading is done. Can you talk about that too? Because having that amount of cash dependent on this kind of technology that has so many ways that it could fall apart, that's precarious to say the least.
Absolutely. I mean, Bitcoin or crypto in general, it's bad economics in that it's private money controlled by corporations and whales, basically. And it's also bad technology. I'm not a computer scientist, but I've talked to a number, and I've yet to really speak to a technologist or computer scientist who's not financially invested in crypto, who says that blockchain and crypto specifically is a good thing, basically, from a technological perspective. These networks are very slow. Right now, there's an interesting piece recently in Time magazine about Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum. But one of the main points was that Ethereum is actually too popular because it's the second most popular blockchain after Bitcoin. But the Ethereum network is overcrowded, so it has very high gas fees, which is basically a transaction fee. So they would actually be better off right now because Ethereum doesn't have much capacity if it got less popular. And so you see this throughout crypto, which is that these technologies aren't necessarily as robust and as powerful as they claim to be. There are issues with basically the immutable nature of blockchains, which you can add information to, but you can't delete. This shows up a lot in what are called smart contracts, where basically if you do something wrong, you can't undo it. And that's how you lose $20 million through one misclick.
If you it's like Venmo. If you Venmo the wrong person, basically, you just can't get it back. I mean, that's insane to me.
And there's no insurance or anything like that, of course. There's no regulatory process or bureaucracy, however cumbersome, to help you. There's no person on the other end of the line. So that's one thing that really strikes me is not only the bad economics and the sort of the lack of political governance, but you talk to people who really know their stuff and don't have a financial stake in this. Nicholas Weaver is a great example. He talks about this a lot on Twitter and elsewhere in his writings, computer scientist at Berkeley, that these networks just aren't very good or robust. The technology is not that impressive or flexible. And Visa, for example, you can look up the numbers, but the Visa or MasterCard network is much more active and heavily used with much less electrical or computational expenditure than any blockchain.
So I'm just sort of a lot of this just feels like this is a direct function of wealth inequality in the world. And just people with just like, I've got my, whatever it is, my 10 million, my 50 million, I've got the extra billion, and I'm going to see if I can turn that into 30 billion by just like investing in this and seeing if enough people bite. I mean, that's why, like, I wonder if, if there is this crash, if it doesn't just reinflate almost immediately, because there's so much money concentrated in so few hands now, it feels like, in the context of this country, but also I think, sort of worldwide, that there's always going to be somebody in there who's going to be like, I can reinflate this market tomorrow, and everybody will come back in. And then I'll just get out in, I don't know, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think even if this all crashes and people lose a lot of money, including, I think, a lot of everyday retail traders who maybe can't afford to lose a few $1,000s or something like that, we'll see another version of, again, probably really soon. For example, I think some people are going to simply blame the government or some other outside force, especially if the government has a role in kind of popping this bubble, which I don't know how much enforcement they're going to actually do. But I think you're just going to see other people say, we need to do it better this time. And that does stem from the economic conditions in this country, which is sort of a lot of inequality and really a form of casino capitalism where gambling feels like one of the main ways to get ahead. I mean, of course, I talk about this stuff all the time, so that influences what ads I see. But on Twitter, I pretty much only see ads for crypto and for sports gambling, which is now legal and everywhere in New York. And I think those are sort of products of the same economic conditions, which is just that, I mean, I don't know how else I'm going to transcend my economic conditions. I'm going to throw some money down the latest speculative fervor, and maybe I'll be one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, I mean, there really is Sam, I like sports gambling, so that's why he's looking at me. But I really don't bet that much. It's more for fun, not to defend myself all the time.
But, no, I'm not anti-gambling. If you know the risks, that I think that's fine. Yeah.
At the same time, I mean, I am interested in it as a manifest. You call it casino capitalism in your piece, and you just said it there, but it really is just a late stage capitalism, is it not? I mean, there is a mass desire from people to understandably so knock down the door of this like palace of capital that is accessible to only certain people, and it's kind of this false promise of democratization where it's like, I mean, you know, the Gatsby green light or whatever, that you can never reach it, and it's, I mean, we've established it's become an established way, or I guess a socially acceptable way to scam people, and that seems like that, you know, I don't know, that's a business model that goes hand in hand with gambling and like with the other scams like Theranos or Firefest that have dominated the news cycle over the past few years.
Yeah, we argue that we live in sort of a golden age of fraud. We're not the first to the term, but that economic conditions combined with sort of a general tolerance for more risk, perhaps, and lack of enforcement from authorities, and a number of other things that have contributed to this kind of rampant forms of fraud. White-collar criminals seem to be getting away with it. They get Netflix series. They don't go to jail. Or maybe they'll go to jail and get the Netflix series. But and I think, you know, crypto isn't necessarily inherently fraudulent, but it's very well suited for it, and it attracts both technologically, and it attracts a lot of people with experience in fraud. So I can't tell you the number of people who I've talked to who have said they've been scammed, many of whom remain true believers in this stuff. But it really is endemic, despite what some people might want to think.
What do the scams look like? I mean, I've heard stories. Mm-hmm. I know, like, I've heard stories almost firsthand of like a friend of mine's brother was like walking their dog in like a LA dog park, and somebody came up and gave them said like, I'm giving out like $100,000 in some type of crypto as a way of jumpstarting it in some fashion. I mean, it didn't turn into $100,000 until other people were convinced it was worth $100,000. And then I think it just all sort of like dissipated. I mean, that's the VC money, right? Somebody's just coming in and saying, can you turn this million into 10 million? And well, the way we do it is by getting some people who seem to be like mavens or, to go out. And so what do the scams look like?
Well, the general model is similar to what you were just describing, which is basically MLM. And there are different ways in which that's achieved. But in terms of specific scams, there are things called rug pulls, which are basically the leader of a project will just abscond with all the money, which is a lot easier to do when a lot of these people are anonymous, especially in the world of DeFi or decentralized finance. This happens with NFT collections too. Maybe people prepay or they buy in the beginning and they're promised, again, a lot of features or future access, and then the leader just disappears. That's a very common one. Coordinated pump and dumps in which, insiders are cashing in. I'm working on a story. It's a bit of a difficult one, but of a pretty major crypto company scamming its own employees, basically lying about compensation, and it involves tokens and other things. But because some people are getting paid in tokens. So there are many varieties. A lot of them are sort of twists on traditional financial scams, and there are a lot of hacks, people clicking on the wrong link. Security is a major issue, but I think the constant here is that risk always devolves onto the individual in the crypto economy. And when something goes wrong, you're mostly out of luck, even if it happens on Coinbase or one of these big exchanges. And it's a lot of, one of the mottos of crypto is DYOR, do your own research. And some of the people I talk to say, oh, I was scammed, but, I didn't really research the person enough. It's kind of on me. I hear that all the time.
And to be clear, the reason why this is so susceptible to scamming is the anonymity is built into the system. So, as opposed to a situation where it's like, hey, send me $4,000, write the check just to cash. And I would be like, hey, wait a second. Why am I writing it to cash? Why don't I write it to your name? In this instance, it's like, write it to cash because that's the whole system. That's the way the whole system works. So there's no way to differentiate. There's no way to do that research really on a person at the end of the day, because the anonymity and the idea that like, that's a feature, not a bug of all this, is that like, we can take this cash and just run away and no one will know. And that's the whole point of it.
Yeah. I mean, recently there was a story about a guy working on a very prominent, he was the treasurer actually, a very prominent DeFi protocol, meaning he basically controlled hundreds of millions of dollars worth of crypto on behalf of people who had staked money and things like that. And he went under this name Sifu. Well, of course, not his real name, of course. And then he was recently unmasked as one of the co-founders of Quadriga, which was a crypto exchange, which in sort of typical fashion collapsed when the founders, including him, absconded with all this money. So he just came back under another pseudonym and got very involved in a very lucrative crypto project. So you see that kind of thing a lot. There's just, an essential part of kind of doing business and even securities laws is disclosure. And both disclosure of who you're dealing with, where's money going, and also sometimes what kind of risks are involved. And you just don't see that anywhere here, besides the lack of enforcement and lack of political governments. So it's really easy to just kind of get around the most basic checks.
Well, do your own research too, right? Is difficult when a lot of the material out there is written by people who have a ton of crypto in stake. Like, I mean, I have a friend that was, I'm listening to this podcast. I think I should buy some crypto. Look it up. Oh, that person, is very intimately involved in this current kind of cryptocurrency and has a huge investment in other people buying crypto. So their stakes and prices inflated. I mean, and we're talking about crypto scams and what constitutes a crypto scam. I mean, I'll just say it. Isn't the entirety of it all just a big scam in and of itself? Isn't it just a
I would say so,
multi-level marketing scheme? Exactly.
I'm glad you got back to the multi-level marketing thing, because I think that's what we're talking about, which is your friend just out of self-interest needs you to buy in to pump their own bag, as they say in the industry. To it's a rising tide lifts all boats situation. They may want you to buy their currency or the one they're invested in. That's best, but really, there aren't a lot of incentives to ask tough questions in this industry. I think there are some good journalists, but also there's a lot of cheerleading. There's a lot of false information, outright disinformation. So people don't really want to hear the bad news or start asking how much underlying value is there here. It's just hype and celebrity endorsements, more ads, keep pushing, keep shilling, because eventually, line go up or number go up is a meme in the industry. This is all just about ensuring that number go up.
How is this? I mean, and maybe you can explain like the underlying blockchain technology, which is always sort of like, it seems to me to be the sort of second, I don't know, like a second order way of somewhat being supportive of crypto. Like, I don't know about cryptos, but the blockchain technology that underlies it really is going to have some interesting applications, because it seems to me like, just I guess this is a two-part question, that crypto is nothing more than like, and I guess, I just sort of was reintroduced to this term, reading about how we've decimated Afghanistan's banking system. But the Hawala, which is, yeah. I mean, isn't that what it is? Like, I know a guy in Afghanistan who has a trusted guy in New York, and I wire him money. And so the way that I get money to my family in Kabul is I give it to this guy in New York. He takes a little VIG and then he sends it to his guy. They take a little VIG and then they get it to my parents.
Right, right. It's interesting you say that because someone recently did describe crypto to me as potentially digital Hawala. I mean, it's a comparison I'd like to look at more. I think the main difference is just that it makes sense as a way to transmit money and transmit value to someone else, especially in a difficult area. The main difference is just that crypto has become, as sometimes said, it's for transmitting money or for remittances, but it's really about speculation. So while Hawala moves a lot of money and is actually a very effective system around the world, but it actually moves it it's more effective arguably than crypto. It moves it at a low rate through trusted parties, and there's no unnecessary speculation attached.
And there's accountability.
Yes,
right? Because like I know I gave it to this guy, and that guy knows he gave it to that guy. So there's like some type of way to follow at least the money if it doesn't show up at my parents' place. And so, but what about blockchain? Like what? Like is there like? It seems to me that blockchain is just like a digital ledger on some level that is secure. Are there other applications that are going to be, I guess are going to open up a whole new way of doing something?
I would say no, but I would get yelled at, as I often do, by crypto and blockchain advocates. I'm trying to be open to the idea that there are use cases or possibilities. I think there are a couple things going on here. I think the most likely use cases beyond just sort of cryptocurrencies are probably in sort of the back end of banking or logistical systems, in the plumbing, really, especially in banking where some stuff is running on 40 or 50-year-old code. But I don't think, based on my limited technical understanding, but also the people who I talk to who know a lot more than me, that the blockchain itself is necessarily a revolutionary innovation. It is basically a distributed ledger, a database that you can add information to that does have a consensus mechanism to make sure that people aren't manipulating it. But you can't delete anything. It consumes a lot of power. It's not very fast or effective, as we talked about earlier. So I don't see it as the revolutionary technology it's portrayed as. I think that's why you get a lot of mystification and salesmanship in blockchain and in crypto, which is because with the lack of use cases, you have to hype up the tech itself and say, well, eventually we'll figure it out or we'll find it soon. But we're basically 13, 14 years kind of into the crypto experiment, and the use cases aren't quite there. And blockchain itself is actually from the early 90s.
And let's just talk briefly about NFTs because I feel like I'm at the same place with NFTs as I was probably like 6 or 7 years ago with crypto, which is like, I mean, I guess, and maybe it's just over my head. Like I don't understand the concept here, but as far as I can tell, it is just taking something that's arguably more tangible than even crypto, I guess, because it's a specific representation a lot of times, or it can be anything, right? That you can in some way, you have to visually see, or I guess hear, you have to see or hear, not necessarily touch, but see or hear, right? So that it is like, you can sort of encircle some type of digital space, as it were. And then
it's a
like,
receipt for a piece of art. That's what
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually, encircle is a good word too, because I've heard enclosure referred to sort of enclosing the commons, if you want to be intellectual about it. But yeah, it's basically a receipt saying you own this thing that's still stored on a server somewhere else. And I think this speaks a lot to what you see in crypto and Web3 and all this stuff, is a real reverence for property rights, for traditional kind of meat space property rights, and trying to impose that on the digital world really ineffectively, but still trying very hard with a lot of ideological fervor attached sometimes, which is like, we need to impose artificial scarcity. We need to let people own stuff and sell stuff and trade stuff, even if the systems are complicated and don't really work and don't necessarily have a lot of inherent value. That's where you get the complicated financialization of all this stuff. But that urge towards artificial scarcity and property rights, from a decidedly right-wing perspective, I think is behind a lot of this.
Was the theory behind it like, hey, an artist will do, a series of back in the day, actually, I owned a Giger statue, H.R. Giger, the guy who did
Oh,
Alien.
yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, I sold it, and now it's worth like probably 15 times more than I sold it for, because I hit a little roadblock at one point. I had to sell it, and but back then, that's not the story. But it was number 7 out of a run of 35. And in this instance, with the NFTs, it's like, this is proving like this is number 1. Like, you can do all these other copies, but this is number 1. And that's what you have. But it seems to me that the whole point of 7 out of 32 was that the mold for this statue was going to deteriorate each time you use it. So 32, the artist chose 32 because it had gotten so degraded by you get to 33 that he was like, it's not my work anymore. And the value, the closer you were to 1, increased because it was theoretically the closest to the artist's vision. But in the digital world, with those monkeys or whatever it is, my copy of number 2 looks just like number 1.
It's a screenshot.
And so what? Like, it's just to pretend as if it was diminished, but it really, again, is just sort of like, it's all make-believe. Like, if the person who owns it dies and anybody who can attest to it being number 1, there's no, I mean, art itself in that way. Like, I know, there's people who fix art that was torn or, reproduced. And so there's some question there too. I guess it's a similar dynamic, but this seems to be even more like, come on.
Yeah, well, you're really dealing with artificial scarcity and sort of artificial provenance, which people do value in the art world, but it's a factor of physical media. If the company that made your H.R. Giger statue goes out of business, or it's not really a problem for you, the statue won't disappear. If the company that made the shelf you display it on goes out of business, you'll still have the shelf. But, if OpenSea, which is the main NFT market, has problems, or whoever is hosting the actual NFT or the JPEG or whatever, it's much more wrapped up in these other companies and systems than they would like us to think in the supposedly decentralized world where everyone is sovereign over their own digital assets. It's really not like that in practice.
It definitely feels like there's some people who have too much cash, and that's
for sure.
That's the problem.
Yeah, but you worry more about the people that don't have that much cash who are getting suckered by this. Like, I think that's the
absolutely. And I think a lot of retail traders, as they're called, are losing or risking more than they can afford to lose.
Jacob Silverman, staff writer at the New Republic. Look forward to that upcoming book, Easy Money, co-written with Ben McKenzie. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And folks, we're going to head into the fun half. See if because we could take that teapot off of the.
It's off. The filter was only on Jacob's output, but yeah, should have cleared up.
Yeah, I mean, it was something to do with his connection.
Yeah, it sounded exactly like a teapot.
It sounded like a teapot, but it wasn't actually a teapot.
Unless he was boiling the log.
I'm getting asked about the Giger art. Yes, in 2004, I think it was, or 3, I used to hang out at a bar, and the bar actually must have been like the end of, like, around 2000. Yeah, maybe it was actually like late 90s. And I had all this sitcom money, and I was hanging out at this bar, which was my regular go-to bar on 3rd Avenue. And Giger's like New York, or like maybe his only like art rep, hung out there, and there was a statue in the bar of the birth machine baby. I'll tell the story in the fun half. What am I giving away for free? This is a great story. Great story of how again, my business acumen. Folks, speaking of my lack of business acumen, you can support this program by becoming a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half, and you allow this show to survive and thrive. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget the live show. Get the your streaming tickets for Brooklyn this weekend at amquickie.com. It's going to be a cavalcade. It's like it's like a homecoming. It's like a, I don't know what else to call it. But check it out. You're going to enjoy it. And get that streaming ticket if you sign up for the AM Quickie at amquickie.com. Check out the email the next day. You will get, it'll be $5. $5. Quite a deal. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Lekian media universe?
Yeah, tonight on Left Reckoning, we'll be talking with Nick Bolin. He's a correspondent from High Country News about rural America, the class structure of different parts of it, and also the partisan politics of it, and how those two things are pretty disconnected. That's tonight, Left Reckoning, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. I'll also talk about how Sturgis has been taken over by like a private company and sort of forcing it into. Basically, last year, a bunch of Sturgis residents didn't want the rally to happen because of COVID and stuff like that. And turns out when you privatize a lot of these decisions and put them in the hands of private companies, that you can't say whether you want the bikers to come to your community or not. So a little bit of a careful what you wish for in terms of turning your country.
That's what happened with Chicago's parking meters.
Oh, yeah. A very similar story, actually. Yeah.
They sell off the parking meters, and then all of a sudden they realize, like, wait a second, we've got a ton of like, we can't get rid of these cars, or we can't do a pedestrian walkway on this street because we've got to pay for the revenue for this for 99 years.
I just want to say one quick thing about blockchain. Like, there's the history of accounting, which has double entry bookkeeping, which was very important to like merchants in like Venice, for instance. That took care of all this. You don't need a third entry bookkeeping, which is what blockchain promises. It's just redundant. The double entry bookkeeping did all of the things that blockchain is supposed to do.
Well, that's why with the Sammy dollars, we don't use that
for quadruple entry.
We use quadruple entry bookkeeping with the Sammy dollars, which we're going to introduce soon. We're going to be looking for investors into the Sammy dollars.
Sam coin.
Well, actually, maybe we should call it Emma dollars, so that when Sammy takes off with all the investment money, Emma,
that's
the
smart
namesake
branding.
of the dollars, is left holding the bag.
Mm-hmm. And I have no plausible deniability at that point either.
It's called Emma dollars.
I know. I mean, good. You're good. You're getting good at scamming people. Congrats.
I honestly do think that we should have like early on did the.
If we did a scam, a joke coin. I mean, that's what Dogecoin was. It was like kind of. I mean, maybe I'm getting that history a little bit wrong, but
no, it is. It's I think it's on a Barstool or something stupid.
And then it became like a sort of real thing. And I honestly think that we could have.
It's like Dianetics, right? I mean, it's like how like. L. Ron Hubbard was like, I wonder if I could start a religion. And then like,
did it. I mean,
he would, right. Thinking big.
I mean, I will say, there was a time like 6 years ago, we were like, should we just take, Bitcoin as a...
We took some from a site, didn't we?
No, we did sign up for, let's do this.
Yeah. 646-257-3920.
Excuse me?
Yep.
What was the middle numbers?
646-257-3920.
Okay. Oh, I just got a report. Lindsey Graham stormed out of the meeting. The
He's really like this.
How many times can you go to that well?
Soon he's gonna like throw wine like a real housewife.
Right. Unbelievable.
You bitch.
We'll be right back after this. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it.
Right
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
talking
Oh,
for a
wow.
second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Who libertarians?
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge met.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-3501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back. It's the fun half. All right, let me just get this story out of the way so we can do this. So I'm at the bar, and I was friends with the bartender. I was a reg at the bar. That's what we used to say back in the day.
You can still,
Short
still
for
say
regular.
it, right?
And he's like, do you want to buy one of these statues? I mean, I had a lot of sitcom money.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do with it. I was, my rent was like, I don't know, maybe I think like around $1,200 a month. I had a studio apartment, and I was making like a year's worth of rent in a week at that time with like sitcoms, any given sitcoms, maybe more. It's a crazy time.
Why didn't you break your lease and upgrade your apartment?
Because I was like, I don't need to. I'm perfectly fine staying here and banking the money so that I can walk away from this crap. And that was, and I'm glad I did. I mean, that's it. It gave me. I'm a saver. I don't know if I come off that way.
I would have at least upgraded to a 1-bedroom.
Nope.
That's all I'm saying.
Nope. I didn't care. I was like, I just look around. Like I could go. I was actually thinking like I could have this place. I could go to a smaller downscale.
Or you could have
and bought
a place.
Well, I did end up buying a place around there. And but they said like, you buy one of these statues. I think it was for like $7,500. And I thought it was cool. And I was like, I'll take it. It was heavy. And I mean, it was like this big.
I don't know anything about art. So who is this guy?
Giger. He's the one who designed Alien.
Well, those are cool looking.
Yeah. And this was like very apocalyptic, and that was what I was into at that time. Yeah, this must have been late 90s. And so I bought it, and I held on to it. At one point I was like, when Air America went under and the real estate market went under and I started this, it was around the time I started this show, like 10, 12 years ago. And I was like, I should just sell it. And I think I maybe sold it for $8,500. I sold it, and My sister, texted me like literally like 3 weeks ago. Do you still have that Giger? I'm like, no, I sold that like 10 years ago. Because now it's worth $100,000.
Okay. There you go.
So, I mean, I made $1,000. I'll take it. And if I had invested that $1,000 wisely, it would be worth probably $4,000 today or something. I don't know. But that's the story.
I'm looking at his art now. It's scary, but cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a sci-fi thing, and I wasn't out looking to buy art. It was just like I was at the bar, and I thought like, oh, am I gonna get free drinks now? I did not. Okay. All right, let's get back to what's going on with the. Oh, let me open up the phone lines. So which one is this? Now, is this this was earlier this morning before Lindsey Graham walked out for the second time. There's only so many times you can walk out until people like.
Again,
I mean, yeah, I feel like if you walk back in, that kind of negates the previous walkout.
He needs to escalate it. He needs to like flip a table, and he needs to throw some wine.
Here's the thing that I think people should understand. And this is where the Republican Party is just so much better than the Democrats. They are not trying to prevent Ketanji Brown Jackson from getting onto the. This is not about that at all. This is not just about these individual senators' fortunes. This is them also running in 2022. Everything that they are doing, they have tied in their narrative into these hissy fits. Here is Lindsey Graham. And remember, there is one macro for conservatives that exists all the time. By macro, this is the overall narrative that is always constant. And that is they are under attack. They are oppressed. The aggrievement is fundamental to conservatism. Fundamental. It is always about what they're losing because of the existence of other people or the assertion of rights by other people or whatever it is. It is always aggrievement. And here is Lindsey Graham playing that hit.
I know I'm out of time, and listen, you've lived an incredible life, but here's one thing that won't happen to you as we wrap this up. How would you feel that if I'd had a letter from somebody accusing you of something, a crime or misconduct, for weeks, and I give it to Senator Durbin just before this hearing's over, and not allow you to comment on the accusation? How would you feel about that?
Senator, I'm not sure. I don't understand the context of the question.
Well, did you watch the Kavanaugh hearings?
No, sir.
Are you familiar what happened in the Kavanaugh hearings?
Generally.
Senator, your time is.
Well, please, Mr. Chairman. So to be honest, it's a minute and 47 seconds. She filibustered every question I had, and she has a right to give an answer, but I'm trying to make a point in 20 minutes. You were here for Kavanaugh. If she's confused about what happened, some people on the other side had an accusation against Judge Kavanaugh that during high school, he sexually assaulted somebody. And the rest is history. That was known to the people on the other side and never revealed during the meetings they had with Judge Kavanaugh. It was literally ambushed. He was ambushed. Oh. How would you feel if we did that to you?
Senator, I've appreciated the kindness that each of you has shown me to see me in your offices, to talk with me about my approach.
But my question is, what if during our 15-minute exchange, it was very pleasant? You're a very nice person. You have a lot to be proud of. I would never do that to you. If I had some information that's sketchy at best, that somehow you've done something wrong, I promise you, just from human decency, I would share it with you. I would not disclose it at the last minute of the last day of the hearing, and I've already given it to a newspaper so the whole country can read about it before you ever said a word.
Senator, she's had nothing to do with the cause.
No, but I'm asking her about how she may feel about what y'all did.
We have
Senator, your
You know, Dick Durbin. Like, at what point do these people realize that being polite in Senate comment, like how much this is so effective for Republicans? It really is.
Yeah.
It is so effective because if you watch this without knowing anything about it, all you're seeing is Dick Durbin cower, essentially. He is the chairman.
Cut him off.
And
Why did that happen at the
that
end?
microphone should have been cut off. Durbin looks like he's just getting, Josh Marshall had this theory called the bitch slap theory. He's just getting smacked around by Lindsey Graham, but it also projects like, well, maybe they did something wrong. Like everything, like Kavanaugh showed that you can bully through something by getting indignant. And that's what Graham keeps doing. That's why he's going to leave this. He's going to leave like 5 more times. Because every time he gets indignant, he is signaling to people who don't pay attention to this stuff, to people who just see the reaction shots, essentially, that he's in the right.
Yeah. I mean, and he's making an aggrievement case about how Kavanaugh and how Republicans are victims. And he's able to make that because Durbin doesn't cut him off and point out the reality that Kavanaugh's on the Supreme Court.
But it's not even,
it didn't even work.
It's not even the content. It is like it's like, one of those things where they tell you to watch in a debate where you turn off the volume and you can read. Like, that's what's going on here.
Yeah,
this is like
the story should be
stuff.
You shut up Lindsey Graham because he was being.
You turn off and you say, how dare, and you go and you say, how dare you disrespect her in this way?
Yeah.
The idea that we would bring up things to Kavanaugh or to Amy Coney Barrett. We didn't say to Amy Coney Barrett, what do you think about Kavanaugh's things? I mean, that's what you do. You get righteously outraged on behalf of the nominee so that you can gain some political advantage. And it appears you communicate to the public what's going on there, that she's being disrespected, and you make it a political liability for them. This is theater, folks. This is theater. And the Democrats don't even participate in it. And so, you want, for those people who the Democrats lose on purpose, they're going to win on the substance here, which is she's going to get confirmed to the court. But this is a perfect example of how they lose on the politics. They lose on the politics. They're going to lose because the placement of Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court is going to end up being a net victory for Republicans, politically speaking, because they're going to have their cake and eat it too. They're going to eat it too. They're going to have gotten all of, the aggrievement value out of it. And they're also going to have not blocked this nominee and not going to pay any price for it. And this is just like, it's just to watch this political malpractice. This is a failure of leadership on the part of Chuck Schumer. It is a failure of leadership on the part of Dick Durbin. It is just this generation of Democrats needs to step aside and learn how to be partisan and gain political and be politically opportunist.
Well, I mean, it's the same reason that Dick Durbin and the rest of the Democrats have basically cowered at the dark money accusation as well. I mean, they have not gone on the offensive whatsoever about dark money as putting Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court. Part of that is because Demand Justice, the group they're referring to, doesn't want Dick Durbin as the head of this committee for many of the reasons that you described. But part of this is that they're scared. They don't want to engage, and they feel like, for some reason, it's like this will be the time that appearing above it all works out for them.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know how to engage. They're like a British fleet of like wooden warships as like ironclads are taking the seas.
It's stunning to watch this. It's stunning to watch this. I mean, they're just running circles around them.
I mean, and you also just like from a human perspective, this is your have some sort of sense of like actual tribalism in that. Protect your nominee. She's getting berated by this dude.
I mean, for God's sakes, Dick Durbin, Patrick Leahy, Dianne Feinstein.
Dianne Feinstein. I mean,
well, but
Dianne
Leahy
Feinstein
too.
doesn't even know where she is.
Leahy too. I mean, for God's sakes, the idea that these are the people who we are relying on, as there is this incredible assault on, like today, like literally every day this week, there has been another essentially assault on the right of women to have control over their own bodies. And it is because and all of that went through that committee. And the idea that those are the three people essentially in charge of these things. And this is a big cost too when Al Franken resigned from the Senate, because he was one of the key futures of that committee. And I will say this too. Kamala Harris, I'm not necessarily a huge fan, but the one thing she could do is ask questions.
Interrogate. Yeah.
That is the one place she's looked competent.
Yep.
Literally the one.
And but I mean,
no, it was helpful. I mean, it was helpful during the Trump era. Like, she got to bring the prosecutorial kind of manner of speaking and interrogation style to the Senate there. But
it really is, I just
to that committee too.
It's just a utter failure on militant apathy. The Senate Judiciary Dems are trouble. Why the F should KBJ have to go through this? She does not deserve this. She didn't take anybody. I mean, look, that may be the case, but she's a grown woman. She will be able to handle it. Okay. Everybody goes up in front of these nominations, but the bottom line is what's more relevant in my mind is the just the political malpractice that is happening here. Not only are they not maximizing this opportunity, the Democrats, they are allowing the Republicans to maximize it for them. Yes, Texas, Oklahoma. We highlighted at the top of the program, just passed a Texas style abortion bill. I mean, it really is just. But let's continue on here with stuff from the hearing, because we said up front, there's two things that the Republicans are doing. Well, there's three things, I guess. One is their macro of aggrievement. So they're talking about Kavanaugh.
You're a victim.
They're a victim always, always.
No, not just they, but you are voter base.
Yes. And in fact, you're victimized by the fact that, like, a white man had no opportunity at this position, because white men never get a break in this country.
Yeah.
And particularly when it comes to the Supreme Court. This is the second woman in a row. And that's their the aggrievement. And then there's the high-low on the crime. You're soft on crime. Actually, you're pro-pedophilia. And and their pedophilia is wrapped up in, like, the grooming that gay people presumably do. Exactly.
Yeah, they're going to turn your kids trans, and you might like black people, and you might question the fact that white people have participated in systemic oppression of black people in this country.
This is the way that it is all their larger narratives. Here is Tom Cotton. He's down the crime lane, which triggers in, all the QAnon stuff, but it's just sort of like the soft version of it.
Yeah,
this is number three.
And number three. Yeah, and when you say she's soft on crime too, right? You can trigger the racism as well as the QAnon panic. It's a twofer.
Rape. Do you know how long the average inmate convicted of rape serves in prison in America?
Go back to the beginning. We just missed
the Senator.
Let's turn to rape. Do you know how long the average inmate convicted of rape serves in prison in America?
Well, Senator, rape is not a crime in the federal system that I'm familiar with working with, so I don't know.
It's 7.2 months. Do you think 7.2 months is too long or too short for someone convicted of rape to be sentenced to prison?
Senator, that's a policy question about the egregious crime of rape, and Congress has said that The court is supposed to take into account a number of factors when it sentences.
Okay.
I can't answer in the abstract.
Well, Judge, these are not abstract. These are very concrete. And remember, these are just the length of sentence if you're caught, convicted, and sentenced. Let's look at cases in which people are never caught. As I said, in 2020, murders increased by the fastest rate ever in the United States. Do you know what percentage of murders are solved in America?
Majority of cases.
I do not, Senator.
The answer is about half, 54% in 2020. Do you think we should catch and imprison more murderers or fewer murderers?
Well, Senator, it's very important that people be held accountable for their crimes. So that is a fundamental tenet of the rule of law.
So is that a yes, we should catch more murderers, specifically the 46% of murderers who get away with it?
Senator, I'm not, to the extent you're asking about enforcement or law enforcement, those...
Judge, it's a very simple and common sense question. 46% of all murders go unsolved. Should we catch more of those murderers or should we catch fewer of them?
Senator, we should hold people accountable for their crimes. And so if people are not being held accountable, then that is a problem.
Let's turn to...
I mean, God. Now, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the lineage that Tom Cotton is speaking in, if this was like 70 years ago, he would be saying, we can't pass anti-lynching legislation because we need to protect white women from rape.
Yeah, which one is the party? Which party is the one that's actively discussing allowing a rapist's family to potentially sue a woman for getting an abortion
Or
if
say
she...
not a woman of getting an abortion, but the providers.
Oh, sorry. The providers. Okay. Yes. The provider for, I get confused state by state, but regardless, is protecting the rights of a rapist family to the unborn child, to the fetus, who is the product of that rape. That's what's happening in the Republican Party right now.
Well, it's also just sort of like incredibly, what should happen after Tom Cotton speaks, which didn't happen, is someone should say, why is Tom Cotton berating the nominee who has absolutely nothing to do with the solving of crimes? Has nothing to do with even the sentencing of rapists.
Why doesn't he want to ask cops that question? Odd.
Well, yeah. How is it that we've like raised police budgets for like decades now, and we're still having such a bad
right? I mean, this is
I don't know what that has to do with the judge in this instance.
The Democrats, after Tom Cotton speaks, should take the opportunity to make their case, whether it's one. I mean, there's really there's two different ways you handle it. And really, every person following that should handle one or the other. One is, why are you being so offensive to her about stuff that has nothing to do with her? It's one thing where there is a credible claim against Kavanaugh and to raise it at these hearings, but federal judges don't deal with rape sentencing. Federal judges don't deal with detective work on murders. What's going on here that you're holding her to account for something that has nothing to do with it? Are you going to talk to her about, foreign policy or like
interrupt him? I mean, who was whispering in the background?
I think that was Booker whose mic was on.
Okay, well then, but it doesn't matter. Like, I know Senate decorum does not allow for interruptions, but this is Republicans, as you say, are treating this as a platform for their politics. Democrats should do the same. I don't give a damn about the Senate.
Of course. And they're treating it like a formality and like something they want to sleep through.
Right. And the second thing they could do is to go on and say, like, well, you know what? I mean, Sarah Cotton, one should wonder about what's going on with policing, that when we have the largest number of police on the streets that we've had in the history of this country.
You lock up more people than any country on earth.
What's the rates of unsolved homicides in Arkansas? Like, yes, Tom Cotton is senator. He has nothing to do with the rate of solved homicides in Arkansas.
Well, no, which is that attitude.
Which is a great way to make an example of what he's doing to the nominee. Like, this is just, again, Democratic failure. Republicans are just walking all over these people. And it is not a coincidence, again, I will say, that probably the most senior Republican on this committee is probably the age of one of the most junior Democrats. And I'm sorry. I'm old. My parents are old. And these people are older. And they're of a different era. Their failure is written all over this. They have the votes already, and they're just so they know. And if they can't predict what's going to go on in these hearings at this point, like, honestly, that just reinforces my case. Calling from an 801 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 801. 801. 801. We will get back to you. Calling from a 626 area code. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
626.
This is Will from Toyabe, California.
Will from Toyabe, California.
Yeah, Toyabe.
Toyabe. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just thinking, we're gonna keep losing this argument with the whole transgender thing if they get caught up in just arguments that really don't matter as much as compared to the bills that they're passing. But one thing is sometimes the conservatives come off as if they have a legitimate type of argument when they say, "Oh, I only believe in two sexes," and you guys are just going off of gender. Like, when in reality there is more than two sexes. Like, for the very fact that there's hermaphrodites. Or what if people have just
intersex people? Listen, yeah. So yesterday, Stephen Crowder goes out, and I appreciate the call. I wanted to later. Thanks. Stephen Crowder went out to do his thing where he debates college students, but doesn't call it a debate because
it's changed my mind.
If he calls it a debate, then people say, "Why are you debating college students? Why don't you debate an adult who knows who knows what they're talking about?" Even though you go in completely with all of your talking points settled, and then just
ambush them on their campus.
Yeah, or invite them in with with that. But it is an ambush. And some guy on Twitter went in, recorded his conversation with I think he's a DSA member from Austin, I believe. Folks can find my Twitter. I can't find the name right off the top. Sorry, I think it's I want to say
it's like Stephen Monachelli.
Okay, and people can hear it. He posted his audio on there, and he brought up a good point, which was, what about intersex? Like, if you're so concerned about there being two genders, two sexes, what about intersex? And Crowder's response
something
was,
like 1 to 2% of the population.
It's actually closer to 0.01%, between 0.01 and 0.02% of the population.
Amnesty says 1.7, but
no, 1.7 I think is a subset of that number.
Okay,
but nevertheless, let's just call it 0.01%, which is what Crowder said, and I have no reason to believe that that's not the case. The governor of Utah today vetoed a bill about transgender students playing in sports. Now, Crowder said, we don't have to worry about intersex people in this, even though it completely shatters his argument, the existence of 0.00001 person who's intersex destroys his argument that there are only two genders. Because if there is one person who is born, who is not fitting into these two, this dichotomy, then he's wrong. But he says we can ignore that because it's such a small number of people. The governor of Utah today vetoed that transgender bill because there are 75,000 student athletes in his state and there are 4 transgender students. Do the math. 0.0005% or something like that.
4 transgender students playing high school sports.
Playing high school sports.
1 transgender student playing girls' sports.
Okay. But the point being, if you take 75,000, or if you take the number 4 and you divide it by 75,000, somebody get your calculator out. I'm convinced that's significantly smaller than 0.01%. I think it's 0.005%. So by Steven Crowder's own reasoning,
Steven Crowder math. And I deliver this here because Steven Crowder would never engage on this debate. Then every moment of energy he has spent on his program, never mind over the years, just probably this week, on the issue of transgender athletes, is completely a magnitude of maybe 5, 10, 100, 1,000 times more overblown than the existence of intersex people that he dismisses because it's so small it doesn't matter.
And I mean, this is the central question, and we talked about this a bit on the show yesterday. Are we playing a clip or
no? There's no clip associated.
Okay,
with this. I mean, he'll come out with it soon, and when he does, we'll do it again.
But fine. Well, this is a pre response to that. Like the central question is this: we don't know if there's a competitive advantage in these case-by-case basis, right? There's probably maybe, but it's very unlikely that that's the case, in my opinion. But fine, if you want to have that debate on the right, and if you're in the middle on this issue, okay, you can concede that point. But the competitive advantage, even if, I mean, I don't even know if that's the case, but even if you want to claim it's definitely the case in those specific sporting events, are you really going to claim that that outweighs and is more important than overall inclusion of trans kids and people in society? That's what you're going to claim? That's what you're going to hang your hat on when, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, there's 2 more numbers that the governor said. 86% of trans youth reporting suicidality. 56% of trans youth have attempted suicide. All these people that are pushing this stuff do not care if any of these kids commit suicide or attempt it. They do not care at all. That's how ghoulish these folks
They kind of want it. I mean, like, they want to bully trans kids out of existence. This is the central question: is, are you going to say that the competitive advantage that you're pretending exists, or you say has, like, you have scientific evidence for, in these swim meets or in these specific sporting events, is more important than widespread acceptance of trans kids? Which, if you were, actually intellectually honest about this, widespread acceptance of trans kids would hopefully lead to more hormone therapy, and so kids can get access to gender affirming care when they're much younger, and so then this wouldn't be an issue whatsoever. But that's not something that, and also engaging in this and axing and getting rid of these discriminatory bills in states like Texas, which block kids from getting gender affirming care. I mean, that's something that you need to reckon with as well. But the point is just that you can't make the claim that the former is more important than the latter.
Oh, but the point is, the reason why they attack, the reason why they have a problem with trans kids, adults in sports, is because they don't want it normalized.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it is. And that is really, and I think it's just the other side of what you're saying. If you have people that you need to, if you are talking to people and you're trying to explain to them why this is so overblown, it is a question of numbers, and you compare it relative to the number of intersex, which is significantly higher in this country than the number of trans athletes trying to play sports. But then the other issue is, you say the reason why this is getting so much attention by the right is because they want to make sure it is their agenda to stigmatize, to make the other, to isolate and alienate trans people. And that is the agenda. That is the entire agenda. And that's the argument. Do you want to do that? Are you against trans people being accepted and not stigmatized and not growing up feeling suicidal, being suicidal, killing themselves,
excluded, just
being
generally
beaten by other people? That's really the choice you have.
Or do you care more about competitive advantages in specific sports? Because, like, what's then to say, you know, it's really unfair that this 7-foot kid is able to play basketball. I mean, the rest of the kids are 5'10". The rest of the kids are 6 feet tall.
It's not like it's not like the hoop adjusts based
Right.
upon who's coming up to it.
Exactly.
Like, how is it fair that if the average basketball player is 6'2", that somebody can come by and be 7 feet and play at the same basket?
This offensive lineman is 50 pounds heavier in this sport.
Yeah, to be fair, I do want to exclude children of wealth from playing in sports because they got too much free gym time. But yeah,
I mean, it's just like, this is, again, like, we talked about this a little yesterday. And this is my final point here. Biological determinism is a really, it's a slippery slope. And the stakes for high school sports could not be lower. And the stakes for acceptance for trans kids in society could not be higher. And trans kids, intersex, non-binary people have existed throughout history for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. And yet, the right in this country is naturalizing competitive high school or middle school sports and saying they're so sacrosanct, we cannot make an adjustment here in order to further society and make it more accepting for trans kids. And that's like, you're just a reactionary, and you're also a bigot. And if you and the people who are, you know, engaging in this debate and being like, you know, well, they have a point, it's not really fair to this girl or this athlete, like, you are just adding and benefiting and helping reactionaries here, because that's not the point. And, you know, they're picking on this very hot button issue for a reason, and it's just to alienate trans kids and further try to separate them from society, as Sam was saying.
Calling from a 706 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Awesome. My name is Justin, and I'm calling in from Augusta, Georgia, the home of the Masters Golf Tournament.
From the what? The what sculpture?
The Masters Golf Tournament.
You mean the Masters Golf Tournament, not golf tournament. I'm joking. Go ahead.
Yes. I don't really have a question. I just actually wanted to say thank you to the community. In particular, the caller Ren. I've heard her call in twice now, but I used to be a conservative, and it took a lot of people telling their experiences to change my mind. And I don't think I would have, been in that position to have my views challenged if it wasn't for people willing to put themselves out there. So just, thank you for people like that, and thank you for the community for being receptive. And thank you guys for what you're doing.
All right. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Good
Thank
to
you.
hear. Sorry, I mocked your accent.
No, he's called. I mean, it makes sense that he used to be conservative, but he maintained his golf fandom.
There you go.
Yeah, right. You can't let go of
Last
all
messages.
parts of.
Calling from an 814 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Margaret from Pennsylvania.
Margaret from Pennsylvania. Second Pennsylvania caller in a row. Say the word GOLF, please.
Golf.
Yep. Same problem. All right. What's on your mind?
Well, actually, I'm calling because I attended the last show that you did at the Bell House, and I was lucky enough to shake hands with Michael. And I would love to come to this one, but I can't do it. But he's been in my thoughts a lot lately. And the other thing I wanted to say was talking about NFTs. I found a really good YouTube channel. I don't know if you've heard of it. Dan Olson. It's called Folding Ideas.
No, I thought you were going to plug Scam Economy with Binder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
This guy, he does a whole, it's an hour and a half, I guess. Starts with the whole 2008 mortgage-backed securities crisis and explains that in a crystal clear way, and then launches into what NFTs are, and it's really good. I really recommend it.
What is it called? Dan
And
Holder?
his name is Dan Olson, Olson, and his channel is called Folding Ideas.
Okay.
And then one other, well, actually, there's a couple other people I was hoping you might consider interviewing. One is Michael Hudson. He's an economist.
Yeah,
He's
I've tried to get Hudson
several books.
on. Back last time we tried, he had a weird thing where he would
Oh.
only come on if you had a transcript, but we'll try and get him again.
Well, he's old. he's 80, I think. So maybe that's, I don't know. And then the other guy is Stephen Keen, the Australian economist.
Have we not had Stephen Keen on? I think we have had him on.
Maybe you have. Yeah. They're both fascinating, and I know Keen's running for office in Australia right now. So,
All right,
yeah,
maybe
I'm
we'll do that.
hoping.
Well, thank you, Margaret. I appreciate
Okay.
the phone call.
You bet. Thank
Sorry
you.
we won't
Bye-bye.
see you there in Brooklyn. Incidentally, we're highly encouraging a mask wearing in Brooklyn. I don't know if we're going to make it absolutely mandatory, but we're highly strongly encouraging it. We're all going to test.
I had one of those stupid flax seeds in my throat.
Okay.
Hey.
COVID flax seeds?
That's what they're calling it these days.
I did the home test for the first time actually last week.
What? That's the first time you've done a home test?
I've been doing them in front of Barclays. But
Stop.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, it's easy to do.
I was exposed last week, as the people in this office know, and I was testing constantly.
Before that, or just because of you guys?
No, during that time. Every now and then, like, if I'm going to over to my friend's house and I know there's going to be more than one or two people there, I will test. That type of situation.
That's the thing. I just haven't.
Which I rarely do. So, calling from a 304 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 304.
Ow.
It's going once. Going twice. Okay, sorry. 304 is gone. Let's go into
another teapot in the background there.
So we gave you Tom Cotton doing the soft on crime with Ketanji Brown Jackson, holding her to account for unsolved mysteries and for cases where she had nothing to do with any of the sentencing. Because, I don't know, you have a black woman who's a judge in front of you. Why wouldn't you, if you're Tom Cotton, blame her for unsolved murders and for rapes for the average time of rape sentences? But if you're not Tom Cotton and you're Josh Hawley and you were out on January 6th giving the power sign to all your QAnon followers and oath-keeping rioters, well, you want to pick up on the soft on crime, but you got to put a little extra spice in it for the lunatic fringe who will go and bust down, doors in a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. and look for the secret child trafficking pedophile rings that exist there. Here is Josh Hawley doing his best to become the QAnon candidate.
Judges, factors to consider. This, in my view, was an unusual case that had a number of factors that the defendant was pointing out, that the government was pointing out, that the probation office was pointing out. And I sent this 18-year-old to 3 months in federal prison under circumstances that were presented in this case because I wanted him to understand that what he had done was harmful, that what he had done was unlawful, that what he had done violated the law and needed to be punished, not only by prison, but also by all of the other things that the law requires of a judge who is sentencing in this area.
But Judge, with all due respect, and I'm telling you what, I'll be direct with you. I am questioning your discretion, your judgment. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not questioning you as a person. I'm not questioning your excellence as a judge, frankly. But you said it. You had discretion, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm questioning how you used your discretion in these cases. And to me, to take a guy who's 18 years old, who has what the government says is an extremely large collection of prepubescent pornography, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. We're talking about, I mean, gobs of hours of time here that he has. And you say to him, what? That you say that, well, you know, it was just a collection. I mean, he was just viewing it, and it was, you know, essentially they were his peers. You say to him that he's not a pedophile. I don't know how you know that. I don't know why that's relevant to the guidelines, but maybe it is. You say he's not a pedophile. You say that you're very sorry for him and what he suffered, and then you give him 3 months when, frankly, a liberal prosecutor is asking for 2 full years. I mean, it does seem like an extraordinary case to me. It would bother me no matter what. It really bothers me when in every case, child porn case you've had discretion, you've sentenced below the guidelines and below the government's recommendation.
There it is. I mean, going in on the essentially trying the case, right? I mean, presumably, Josh Hawley does not know the case and the circumstances there. But how many months should you get for having child pornography when you're 18?
Yeah. It's a shame that Jim Jordan isn't a senator, so he could be here to ask some of these questions.
It would be interesting to
or
hear.
Matt Gaetz, for that matter.
But
and just the implication that America is soft and lenient on sentencing criminals. We jail more people than any country on earth, not just per capita, but just raw totals. We cage just particularly black people at 6 times the rate that South Africa was. Like the idea, if there's crime here, it's because of severe deprivation and want and things like that need to be addressed throughout in a way that isn't just more cops.
And also, to be clear, the guy ends up on a sex offender registry. I mean, I don't know the facts of the case here, and neither does Josh Hawley. But this is all part of his QAnon, the fetishization they have with pedophiles and the secret dungeons that exist under pizza parlors. And this is what they're going to, this is the Q version of the soft on crime. That's basically it.
Wasn't the I'm trying to look this up in real time, so maybe Bradley, you can find something more about that. Did Josh Hawley have a comment on that governor of Missouri who was accused of child abuse?
Oh, I think he actually, Greitens, yeah, I think he said he's going to drop out. Yeah, he had to immediately rush in and say that under these circumstances. Now, of course, Josh Hawley supported a guy who was accused by, was it 21 women of sexual assault? Josh Hawley, also a big supporter of Judge Kavanaugh.
Oh, yeah.
Accused of sexual assault. In fact, he was offended at the idea that it even came up. In fact, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of people saying, like, how could you hold this guy responsible for something he did when he was like 17?
Whoops.
That was the big thing, right? With like, talk about like 17. And credible claims of sexual assault.
Yeah, I mean, I think we simultaneously need to be doing more to help victims of sexual assault and also not creating a world where the only type of sentencing error is over-sentencing people. Like, under-sentencing is going to happen, I think, sometimes.
Here is Senator Marsha Blackburn taking this opportunity to raise the latest. This is, Republicans have been running on this now for almost 10 years.
Yeah. And
transgender bathrooms, right? Ever since
the Q stuff really juiced it, though.
The Q stuff juiced it. But what also juiced it was when gay marriage was found to be legal by the Supreme Court, the Republicans had to rush around to find something. And I'll tell you what juiced it as much as anything. Joe Biden's whiteness. Because if Joe Biden had not been an old white guy, they would not have had to have leaned in so much on being transphobic on the right. If Joe Biden was a white woman, it would have been more oriented towards women in particular. There would have been we would have heard more about feminazis or whatnot, honestly. And if Joe Biden had been a black person, we would have been back to like how this person's not really an American or
birtherism 2.0.
Exactly.
But now, like I just want to make this point because it's all branches off the same tree of save the children, right? You have now let's control women and their bodies, right? That's but then you have also the trans kids. Your kids are getting indoctrinated by a liberal culture that's not connected to God, and they're going to become trans. And then you have the pedophilia branch as well. This is all that same thing.
But that tree is actually women stay in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, but I know. The concern about the kids is really a concern about what's happening with women getting empowered.
Yeah, that too.
The kids are used to leverage that. It is a complaint about the concern for the kids. Kids need a mother and a father. Kids need a single mom. Like this was 40 years ago when Dan Quayle was complaining about a television character raising a kid alone, a woman raising a kid alone. They want the patriarchal family, period, end of story. And the danger the concern for kids is simply a way to leverage, they're leveraging the kids.
Yeah.
What they want is the woman at home. And so the concern from the kids stems from that.
Certain women at home, certain white women at home, right? They're fine with non-white people and laborers going out to continue to make the economy.
Well, they're going to do that, but that's but
anyway,
that's they're like, that's the perception is they're second order people in that situation. But here is Senator Marsha Blackburn moving into the basically playing the talk radio host for the day, right-wing talk radio host with Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about. Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as our taxpayer-funded institutions permitted a biological man to compete and beat a biological woman in the NCAA swimming championships. What message do you think this sends to girls who aspire to compete and win in sports at the highest levels?
Senator, I'm not sure what message that sends. If you're asking me about the legal issues related to it, those are topics that are being hotly discussed, as you say, and could come to the court. So
it is just stunning, the amount of what do you say to all the women who are not going to win, regardless of who their competition is? What's the message being sent there?
You can't do anything you want to do.
You got to stay in the kitchen.
Yeah, right. Actually, honestly, I mean, they're missing an opportunity here. If they just embrace more trans women competing in sports, then they would just discourage women from participating in athletics or in society in general, unless it's in the context of bearing children for the strong white men of America.
I love it. Is really, I mean, it is such a stunning. Like, how many of these people will deny that women in the workforce are paid less than men? How many people will deny that sexism denies women opportunities in the workforce?
Yeah, what is Marsha Blackburn's position on equal pay? Has she spoken out about that? Been aggressive?
I wonder what her position is on the idea that women could retain some autonomy over their bodily functions. That's not the issue. The issue is college swimming.
Marsha Blackburn came out 2 days ago and said that there should be a reconsideration about the Supreme Court ruling Griswold. I was about to say Griscom, but that allowed for married couples in that instance to have birth control as a right. I mean, I don't
She's very concerned about the message that the swimming sends to the girls.
And this is
the other stuff, not so much.
Coordinated effort. DeSantis, we didn't even talk about it, declared that the runner-up, I forgot her last name, but her first name's Emma, was the actual winner of this swim meet. I wonder how she feels about that, by the way. This, like, one particular swim meet being used as this political prop and galvanizing effort. It's just that Republicans are good at this. It doesn't make it any less vile.
Calling from a 443 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, y'all. This is Sean calling from Maryland.
Sean from Maryland. Speak a little closer to your phone, Sean.
Can y'all hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
Great. Just want to say thank you all so much for the work you do. I still feel like I would have had the same politics I do now, but you have kept me very informed, educated, and Michael had a huge influence on me. Just want to shout out him as well. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
You're doing great.
So I guess I feel like I live in a different reality sometimes because I recognize how horrible things are heading in this country. You talk about it often with the Supreme Court and just how, like, for the next 30 years, we could be envisioning something like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, I know that Republicans essentially want us to be in a country that looks like Saudi Arabia or like apartheid South Africa. And I get frustrated because a lot of my friends on the left, I just don't feel a sense of urgency with people. I just don't feel that people understand how awful things are right now and where we are heading as a country and as a society. And I like throw things out on social media sometimes, and I try to, like emphasize, hey, like this insane senator from Indiana wants to outlaw interracial marriage. They want us to go to apartheid South Africa. Or I try to like use big words to emphasize how urgent the times are right now. But it just it feels like sometimes I'm yelling at a wall, and people just don't want to hear it. Like, it's too negative. Like, I don't. Well, listen, your rights are at stake. Your people you love and just the people in your community or lives are at stake. Like, how can you not understand how awful things are right now? And I just have friends that say, well, oh, why should I participate in the Democratic primary? Nothing's going to change. And I'm just like, voting is harm reduction. We need to do something. It's a level of power that we all have as individuals. It's not substantial, but combined, it can mean a lot and make a huge difference. So I just get frustrated with friends that, you know, I mean, I live in Maryland, so it's a closed primary,
Right.
and you have to register as a Democrat in order to vote in the Democratic primary. So I have a lot of friends that are independent, and I'm just like, you realize you're throwing your power away by not registering as a Democrat. And it's just like, well, I don't want to be a Democrat because the Democratic Party is corrupt and like they're not going to do anything anyways. Look at what they're doing with Biden. And it's just like, okay, well,
dude, listen,
we need to do something.
All I can tell you is, welcome to the last 17 years of my life. But I'll tell you, it was worse in many respects. It was worse during the Bush years. Look, the only thing I can tell you is that the upshot is in 4 or 5 years, when some of your friends realize like, oh, shit, look what happened. They'll be more inclined to listen to you. So, you know, hang in there. I can tell you that like, this is, you know, this era that we're living in is going, sadly, very much like I had anticipated, you know, in the summer of 2016. The following someone like Donald Trump, and I saw this after Reagan, and I saw it after Bush. Less so after Bush, but certainly after Reagan. There's a tendency for people to just either become somewhat apathetic or to go to sleep. And the right is much better at having their people constantly agitated. They're a lot more sort of flexible in what they'll find, and you know they're a lot less shameless. Excuse me. Yes, a lot less shameless. And you know, will blow up an issue like what transgender athletes are doing to our sacred, you know, college sports or high school sports. And, you know, the pattern's the same. People become engaged. When, you know, their rights are assaulted, and then they sort of like think that they can't buy incremental change until they realize that they have to do real harm, you know, like you say, it's harm reduction. Voting for Biden was harm reduction.
Right.
And I mean, let's just imagine for another scenario that this Ketanji Brown Jackson was Supreme Court Justice number 8. Instead of it being 6-3, it was 8-2. Excuse me. I mean, 7-2. And instead of the 100 some odd judges that Biden's gotten into federal judiciary, Trump is on, you know, number 350. And I mean, that's where we could be with this. So all I can tell you is hang in there. You're not as isolated as you think. It's just that your friends need to see what happens when they disengage.
Yeah, I think I have come from a similar perspective, because I probably alienated a lot of folks from North Dakota who followed me on Facebook through the days through a similar sort of process of, you know, being very alarmist about this stuff. But I think looking back on it, I think the thing you want to position yourself as is a sort of a Greek chorus where you're kind of just commenting on stuff and being right about it. And then slowly over time, if you tone back a little bit on the come on, wake up people, but just describe for people what the reality that's happening, they'll come to you for perspective and look to you over the time. You have to slowly build up that credibility, and that will build up as reality hits them in the face.
Yeah, I definitely feel that to an extent. At least like after Trump was elected, I felt like particularly members of my family were coming back and saying, okay, you were right about this. But now it's just like, yeah, people are just falling asleep because Biden's elected and they feel like they can be a little more comfortable. And it's just like, no, he's of course he's better than Trump, but he's still pretty bad, and he's not doing nearly as much as he needs to do in order for us to
and I'll be honest
make
with
any
you,
progress.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I don't even know, like, I mean, and he in and of himself, there's only so much that he can do at this juncture. I'm not saying, I mean, he hasn't nearly done what he, in my estimation, there was a huge failure on the Build Back Better, but, and he's not doing what he could do in terms of executive actions, but there's also a cap on what this guy can do, period. And that's also a function of, like, people need to get engaged on a local level. And, somebody just IM'd, and is a good point. I mean, if they don't believe in electoral politics, that's all well and good. But again, it's like the amount of effort that is expended. I mean, who cares? There's a D next to your registration. I mean, talk about identity politics. This is like the most incredibly narcissistic thing in the world. It's not your voter registration is not some type of, like,
You're not getting
art
tattooed
project.
on your forehead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a form of self-expression. It is a mechanism in which to do harm reduction, period, end of story. And then, I hope these people are going out and doing, doing some type of organizing or mutual aid or something like that. But
that level of person.
Well, yeah. Okay.
The level of person who is
unfortunately,
but appreciate the call, man. Hang in there.
The level of person that is so precious.
Thank you, guys.
If they're called a Democrat or like registered as Democrat, those people engage in this stuff to basically get an excuse not to go to the polling booth on the day. That's what they're mainly looking for, is a warrant to, like, not feel guilty about staying home. And just don't vote then, but stop talking about how it's like a principled stance that's going to lead to somewhere good. It's just you don't want to go to the polling day on that.
Yes, and you don't want to engage in these things in any type of way that requires some level of effort. And that's, like with someone like the Doris, as they are, I mean, for the most part, their audience increasingly conservative. You can actually just see it. And that's all well and good. They're becoming more, Crowder-esque to the by the day. Exactly. I would love it if they held on to some of their, positions that are not, that are supposedly on the left. But, at one point you begin to, the gist of what you're saying, well, Rubin was, I'm a single payer, small government guy. I mean, he was that way for a couple of years into his evolution until it, became too hard for him to reconcile. And I would imagine we're going to see, plenty of that from those quarters. But those supposed leftists who subscribe to that, it really is more about a similar emotional reaction you get to, masturbation than it is about understanding the issues and how and developing a theory of change and figuring out how to move from where we are now to a better vision of society. And they don't want to do the work. I mean, it's no coincidence that you have a guy, like, these people are sort of notoriously ill-informed in many of those instances, and because they just don't want to do the work. And it's really just about, yelling and screaming that provides some type of emotional release. But it all it is it's masturbatory.
That's the thing, is like, there's two people that sort of poo-poo electoral politics. And one I don't have any problem with if they're actually organizing for other issues like tenant organizing, if they've been,
Of course,
right,
yes,
exactly,
without a doubt.
right. And but that's not who we're talking about here. We're talking about the people who like think that the solution is, well, they used to think the solution was the Green Party, or now it's like the
Well, that's the thing. They're not really disengaging from electoral politics.
Exactly. It's just
they're very much engaged in electoral politics, but they're just trying to their theory or whatever it is just sort of, they're just masturbating in the polling booth.
Yeah.
And when you have people who think like electoral politics are completely irrelevant, more often than not, they'll say like, I'll go down and vote at the last minute, but I'm not going to work towards it. That's exactly the type of non-electoral politics perspective to have. It's like, this is the easiest thing for me to do. It may have no dividends, but it costs me virtually nothing. And I will expend my work, and I think this is a more than legitimate a thing to do in terms of politics, organizing and providing mutual aid and building solidarity. I would argue probably more important than being heavily invested in electoral politics. On this show, the reality is the vast majority of people find it easier to be more invested in electoral politics. And this show is just suited towards that. This was, it came out of like a mass media
It's where
type
political
of
attention is too.
Yes.
Like,
and
you can't just be against that.
And I think, people go from here to there in terms of organizing and do both. And also, it's also about legislation. I mean, at the end of the day. All right, let's, this is Shane from Canada. Up here, the NDP, I saw this, signed an agreement with the Liberals to support their government for the next 3 years with no challenging of budgets and no confidence votes. So the Libs effectively have a majority in exchange. We got crap. Just a reminder, third parties are useless without organizations who can put pressure on them. Well, it's also, you have a different form of government up there.
Yeah, it should be more hospitable.
There was like I don't know, dental. Wasn't dental added to the, I thought there was like some, it was like dental, like some marginal increases to the essentially Medicare for all system up there, but I don't know about that. All right, somebody referenced this. Let's talk about this. Folks, I'm not sure we're going to get to any more calls. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to try and end by 2:40 today, or close to it anyways. Sarah Mike Braun, what do they call this? Like saying the quiet part loud?
Yeah.
U.S. Senator. When people say states' rights and other people say like states' rights is euphemism, right? Because the biggest fights we've had about states' rights, in fact, the only fights we've had about states' rights in this country, well, I guess now it's sort of, were about starting with slavery. And then it was whether we could integrate schools. And then whether black people could vote.
Yeah, the wedge issue against Lincoln was that he secretly thought that black people were equal to white people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then it was a question of whether we can provide Medicaid to poor people, to black people. I mean, I'm just thinking of all the states' rights issues that come up. And so, but here is Mike Braun making the connection in a way that you're not supposed to make these days between states' rights.
Whoopsie.
And yeah, this is a big whoopsie. Here he is. This is the mild-mannered, normal Republican, Mike Braun, senator from Indiana.
So you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the question of interracial marriage to the states?
Yes, I think that that's something that if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. I think that's hypocritical.
About Griswold versus Connecticut.
Well, you can list a whole host of issues. When it comes down to whatever they are, I'm going to say that they're not going to all make you happy, within a given state, but that we're better off having states manifest their points of view rather than homogenizing it across the country as Roe versus Wade did.
Homogenizing it is one way to talk about universal rights, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well chosen. The words well chosen. Is that all we have of that clip? Because he's asked at least, I think, another in one more fashion.
Bradley will look it up, but like the idea, this is why, I mean.
But the point, let me just finish. The point why he's asked multiple times. So when he backs off this after the fact and realizes somebody gets on the horn with him, go, dude, you're not supposed to, you're supposed to obscure.
Yeah.
Understand, this was not a misspeak.
I mean, this is why we're, as Bradley tries to find it, like, this is why they're thrilled at this newfound era on the Supreme Court of basic human rights being dispersed and states being up to the state's discretion, because you can serve your base of theocrats and racists, and then that you can extrapolate that towards, I don't know, labor standards and things like that. And then eventually you might be able to help out capitalists as well. So that's what they're foaming at the mouth about. They're thrilled.
Do we have more of that?
Follow-up.
Yeah.
There's he answers before too. This is like the run up to the what we just watched.
So we just saw 2 questions. This is the third, but actually was the first one asked in the series of questions.
That same basis to something like Loving versus Virginia, the Supreme Court case that legalized interracial marriage.
So when it comes to issues, you can't have it both ways. When you want that diversity to shine within our federal system, there are going to be rules and proceedings. They're going to be out of sync with maybe what other states would do. It's the beauty of the system. And that's where the differences among points of view in our 50 states ought to express themselves. And I'm not saying that rule would apply in general, depending on the topic, but it should mostly be in general, because it's hard to have it on issues that you just are interested in when you deny it for others with a different point of view.
All right, pause it for 1 second, and we're going to keep.
So you would be
pause it, because I want you to. His backpedal on this is, quote, "I misunderstood a line of questioning that ended up being about interracial marriage. In fact, it started with interracial marriage. He is in the first question specifically. Loving was the case out of Virginia that was specifically about interracial marriage. And let's let the other 2 questions go, and you be the judge. Did he misunderstand the line of questioning?
In general, because it's hard to have it on issues that you just are interested in when you deny it for others with a different point of view.
So you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the question of interracial marriage to the states?
Yes, I think that that's something that if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. I think that's hypocritical.
Pretty straightforward. He didn't seem to misunderstand or even stutter in his response.
I was going to say, I mean, that is a very interesting misunderstanding that he had there.
Yeah.
He seemed to really get the question.
Well, the first part, he had some plausible deniability if it just made it about loving. But then the question of interracial marriage is
right. Loving. I thought you said larving.
Yeah.
That was a different case. That was a case about interstate commerce.
About a larva marriage.
Yes, I'm sorry.
A larva cannot marry a butterfly.
Right, but then he had it very explicitly laid out, and there it is. I mean, and listen, do I think that the Supreme Court is going to reverse Loving? No, but I think that's the roadmap with a lot of other cases. And he just laid out the justification, the genuine integrity. If you're going to have integrity with this issue, and by issue I mean whether the states decide on abortion whether they decide on gay marriage, whether they decide on birth control.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that 2 senators have brought up some old cases that were considered settled law back to back, day after day, one on birth control and the other on interracial marriage? I guess he didn't bring it up, but like someone asked that question of him. There are conservative groups plotting right now.
Yep. 2 phrases that he used, I want to just take a circle back on. Have it both ways. Like, I don't want to have it both ways. I want to have it one way where the states aren't able to do that.
Yeah.
And we have to decide one ways, and your way is where the states can decide that interracial marriage isn't allowed. And that's the other phrase was let the diversity shine. Like, that's what states do when they're given the ability to ban interracial marriage. That's diversity shining.
You know, for someone who's so tolerant, you're really intolerant of our lack of tolerance. Huh. Funny how that works, Matt.
Madeleine Albright has died, according to CNN.
Okay.
Just feel like we should say.
She died.
Oh, also one more thing. This guy, Braun, graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics from Harvard Business School, where he earned an MBA, and then he went on to inherit his father's truck business.
Nice. Finally. Finally. White guy from Harvard gets a break. Finally. I didn't understand the question. When you said interracial marriage, I heard glacial
I heard
porridge
racial blairage.
and yeah, loving, lurving. I misunderstood the line of questioning, of course.
We also
so
have
much-
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
Here we have Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is incidentally the one of the top fundraisers in the Republican Party.
Yep. They can't, keep her in a corner the whole time while also using her for fundraising. It's a catch-22 for the Republicans because they don't want her saying stuff like this, honestly, I don't think.
They probably don't want her saying it, but it also it goes to show like who their peeps are.
Oh yeah.
This is the program she is on is BKP Politics. I don't know what that
Do a
is.
great job down there.
What does that stand for? BKP.
I don't know, but it says Voice of Rural America there. This is just some sort of like local Georgia.
Oh, look, he's got that Braves thing. He's
broadcast.
really
Man.
Right next to
Oh,
the American flag and the Blue Lives Matter flag.
Yep.
I'll even blame people like Lindsey Graham, who is begging for war every single night on the television. These are the people that gave the Ukrainian people the false hope. And now you see Ukraine just kept poking the bear, which is Russia. And Russia invaded. And the truth is, and this is the hard truth to accept, there is no win for Ukraine here. Russia is being very successful in their invasion, even though we hear different things on television. The things that we see and we know that are actually happening there I don't see a way out for Ukraine.
So just let it happen.
I mean,
it's kind of fruitless. Just let it happen.
This is interesting though. This split in the Republican Party where the populist base is against the warmongering talk, which I can appreciate, and also being pro-authoritarian. But it's interesting because if you look back at folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene or even Glenn Greenwald, maybe everybody who's got Green in their name.
Plus a Mate and a Tracy there.
Well, but early on, they were saying, and look, I don't know who has the ability to assess how Russia's war effort, invasion effort is going for reals. But if you look at like those people back like 3 days into it, where people are saying like, there's something going on here. Russia seems to be stalled in their invasion. They were like, it took weeks for the U.S. to take over Iraq. And so, people are just, there was this sort of, it was sort of dressed up in this sort of like, you're naive to think that Ukraine is fighting back. Now, and that in that naivete sort of held, I don't know, sort of like was hiding some boosterism.
Yeah.
And she's doing the same thing here. Like, now, I don't know if it's true or not, but there was a report today that one of Putin's advisors, granted on climate, quit and left the country immediately. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence that they did this. Maybe it's complete fiction that they did it. There was some reports that like people are starting to question Putin at the top echelons of the Russian government because this is not going well. There's some reports that Ukraine took back some suburbs of, I think it was of Kyiv.
I mean, the U.S. is backing up Ukraine's claims that they've destroyed 90% of Russia's fighting force, which like
No. That their fighting force is down to 90% of
down
what
to
it
90.
was.
Okay,
so that
sorry.
would have been a drop of 10%. But you start getting into, they say something like around 14% drop you can't recover from. But that their fighting force is 90% of what it was when they entered.
But you can't really take that at face value.
None of this
honestly.
stuff, like it's
You
all
can't.
so provisional. Like basing anything concrete on it, I think is a
It
fool's
would
errand.
be malpractice of the propagandists not to project that. But at the same time, we do have footage of Mariupol being flattened.
Yes.
We do not have that footage of Kyiv being taken over. Zelensky is still walking around as it enters into the second month. Very hard to imagine that was the plan. And so it is weird at this point that there are some of these sort of dead enders who are sort of like pretending like it's naive to think that Russia's not going to roll right over them. I think we're past the idea of it being naive to think this. I don't know that we know what's going on there.
Yeah, because there's a countervailing force where Ukrainians are trying to boost themselves because they're fighting off an invasion.
But she's
right?
an authoritarian. I mean, like that's the thing is like they are arrogant in terms of they feel, and I'm sure if she was a representative during the Iraq War, it would be the same thing. Like the might of our military and of our desire to bring freedom to Iraq is actually going to make us like just basically lay down and take it, Iraq, etc. They are drawn to power and military might, and so that's why she's I guess manifesting or why her commentary is manifesting as a dead ender in that way.
Right.
It's just because she's drawn to that.
All right, folks, we don't have time for any more calls. Let's go to the IMs. Sailor Cat from Discordia. Every time MR speaks on people who don't vote, it's always hyper-focused on Twitter LARPing left, which is the smallest group of people who don't vote. They ignore people who face the choice of voting or going to work, standing in line for 12 hours in Georgia or Florida. It's understandable that if voting creates material hardship, then a person might not have the same emotional attachment to their vote that a person who does not experience similar hardship. I will also say that every time MR talks about changes in voting laws that are to promote people standing in line, or the closing of voting booths, or the
or making it a national holiday.
Yeah, we were
or
responding
narrowing-
to a caller who
Right.
asked us about this.
every time we talk about that, we are not talking about the Twitter LARP.
Yeah, Jesus.
We can only talk about one thing at one moment.
Yes.
No, emphasize everything perfectly to every member of the audience, I think is the goal of the show.
Yes, show is just for you.
Honestly, to think that we have ignored sort of voting law changes and things,
many
let's
times
say
we
like
need
the
Ari
voting,
Berman on?
like exactly, like if I get a nickel for every time I said the words Voting Rights Act, or the assault on the Voting Rights Act, or the Supreme Court's assault on the Voting Rights Act, or Section 2 or Section 5, I honestly, we could afford to ban Hello Tushy ads just for as part of Emma's compensation package. All right, let's do some IMs, then we'll get out of here. Between 290 and Route 9. Sweet. Yeah, nobody knows what that means. It could mean Auburn. It could mean Lincoln Square. Don't know. Emma is correct regarding the absurdity of their framing. But yes, fairness in sports is a fig leaf for their actual attack on trans people, for which they will use any weapon they can get hold of. Docu Mobravaz. Hump day? Oh God, I'm cresting.
Oh man. Enough.
Between the 101 and the 5. I vote for LA show.
I think we should do Austin. Do like a left reckoning.
I've never been to
MR
Austin.
one.
I'd
that would
love
be
to
good.
do that.
That would be good. Yeah. We got to think about that. Yep. I discovered an actual trick to potentially reaching disenfranchised people, not anti-establishment dumb leftists, while canvassing for Bernie. You know, I'd like to read the rest of this. However, it completely negates the fact that voting law changes. So you say, I get it. The system hasn't worked for you. You have every right to not want to vote, but don't vote for yourself. Vote for these kids who can't vote for Bernie yet, want him to be president for their future. It actually worked. Yes. And the other thing also, just to address that, that other IMer, is that we can actually provide arguments for people who can go out and exercise them. We can't necessarily reinstate the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
Or Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
I'm working on it, guys, but yeah,
Matt's
no
on
promises.
But it's like he's like,
Trickier than I thought.
I got a lot of work to do. I want to play games.
I got
And
this
I'm
new
like,
Civil War
"Dude,
game, too."
what are you doing? Why aren't you changing this? Why aren't you changing?
So you're
the Voting
reading
Rights Act?"
Civil War books and playing a Civil War game right now? That
Yep.
is commitment.
Grand Tactician Civil War, baby.
I mean, it's a big topic, so you've got a lot of material.
That's how he went to Spain too. Walk around listening to books on like
Anthony Beevor's
Spanish.
War for Spain.
When you dive in, you dive in.
I hate because I visited London in my early 20s and I was like still already kind of a history buff, but there's so much I wish I knew and could have checked out when I was there. So I don't like that sense of being ignorant and ignorant American. Basically.
Are your audiobooks all the ones that you created yourself?
No, I got a lot from Audible itself, but I do have a bunch text to speech ones.
You should market those.
The ones that I made text to speech.
Yeah.
I think there might be copyright issues with that.
Oh, there probably is.
Yeah.
Who cares?
You'll be fine.
But if you want the hookup, DM me. I can send you whatever you need.
I want to go to Austin. I really now I'm like pumped about this prospect of doing this.
Is the U.S. empire now finished? Is this something the left everywhere should celebrate? And can you now be looking forward to public health care thanks to external competition from Asia? Assuming we don't all die I don't even know how to respond to that. No, we have.
You think that U.S.
like
elites are gonna
800 bases around the world?
I talked with Gene a little bit about this, and like even if on the long term, like this sort of moment creates some sort of opening for multipolarity, like that is not necessarily a goal in and of itself, because you had a move from a unipolar to a multipolar world in like the 30s, and it wasn't necessarily like all good for everybody. Like for instance, fascists and capitalists maybe got the best of that moment.
The big caker, Lindsey, is just mad because he hasn't gotten to go through the training program at Gitmo yet. A Square, Sam, Emma, the performative, craven nature of our politics and the embarrassing display with these hearings is so depressing at a time when good progressive policies are so needed. This Gitmo debacle still haunts us, but important to note, it is owned not only by Bush, but Obama. But today, feeling more and more excited for Saturday and the video quality upgrade I'm just noticing today. Oh, all right. Matthew from Philadelphia. Sam, I emailed yesterday reminding you what the calling club idea was. Yes, I thank you. I appreciate that. Old age really does a number on the memory. Indeed. It was the one call member month at your direction idea to leverage your dedicated fans and give them a vehicle to invite friends and family to get involved. Yes. We're on it. Uncle Morty, according to Wordometer's info, the number of U.S. COVID deaths will cross 1 million today. Here's a salute to the vulnerable, the unlucky, the intransigent, and the plain stupid who made this possible. Yeah. I suspect tomorrow will be the day. Sam, as an educator, the name is Ketanji. Sam, as an educator of African-American culture and heritage, it hurts me to so many progressives misspell and mispronounce Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's name. It's not Ketanji Brown. So many news sites and progressive handles and YouTube channels and hosts continue to pronounce it as Ketanji, are not even realizing her apologies.
Sam mispronounces a lot of names, and
I don't even know which way the right way is. I don't know.
It's Ketanji.
What am I saying?
You say sometimes you'll say Ketanji.
Oh, it's Ketanji. Ketanji.
But I feel like I've been picking that up a little bit. But it's Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yes. As opposed to Ketanji.
Yes.
Ketanji.
But just if you say it one more time, and now it's gonna get in my head. It's Ketanji.
Right. Yes. Well, as a listener of this program, if you are not aware of my inability to pronounce I have trouble sometimes with Emma Vigeland.
Yeah. And this is actually probably just making it worse.
Yep. Trump change. You could consolidate your ad reads by incorporating the phrase "see bidet," but pronounce it "sebede." You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Punch drunk pulpit. Till today, I managed to live 31 years on this planet without ever hearing the term tokenomics. Yes, well, imagine my feeling of having lived that almost double that. Tojo's bald head. Does that mean Shaq or Anthony Davis shouldn't be able to play basketball because of their competitive advantage due to genetics?
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Armstead. April Fool's Day is next Friday, and the Tort Conference is usually in April. Those are traditionally two of my favorite shows. Without spoilers, is anything special planned this year? Well, here's a spoiler. I don't think I'm going to Vegas for the shows. It's happening too quickly, and it's happening early in the month, and I can't leave the kids at that time because it's my week, and my ex is also on a business trip, I think, at that time. April Fool's Day, I've been debating about that. Like, I still don't know if, frankly, I'm ready to do something like full-on comedic. Contemplated rerunning one of our Ken and Ken shows. I don't know. I'd have to go back and see if they're still, but we'll see.
The first one after Trump one might be funny to revisit.
Yeah. Lionel Hutz. Breaking. Alex Jones defied a court order to appear for a deposition. Attorney says he was sick in doctor's care, but he was hosting a show at the time of the deposition. Ooh. Maybe it was pre-taped. Your Honor, it was pre-taped. I didn't understand the question.
Yeah.
I'm not here right now. It's not a Supreme Court confirmation hearing without Lindsey Graham throwing a tantrum. All right, 3 more. Skippy, did you actually own a Giger art? What did it look like? If so, I'm going to do another one because I already read that. All Omega Shendaran. Sup, MR crew. Stoked that this community has great people. Kowalski gave me a ticket for Brooklyn. Can the MR Discord get a shofar? Yes, if you have particularly stuff like that. If you can't make it to a show and you want to donate a ticket, go to the Discord. Go to the Discord. That is the place where the people who are going to be most excited to see a show are going to be. And I think we have a Discord channel where, that kind of stuff can happen. So check it out. So kudos to Kowalski and kudos to Omega's Hen Run Dragon. Have you read my email? Saturday is one of the few Saturdays a year I have to work. Luckily, I have the live stream tickets, and you guys start in the evening for my time zone, so I can wind down with an extra day of work. Some Majority Report Live gives me something to look forward to while I'm running all over the campus, showing people how to turn on a laptop and connect it to a monitor. Thanks for the amazing timing, Sam. Yeah, it's going to be fun. You're going to like it. District Jabroni, thanks, Lindsey Graham, for pointing out that Brown Jackson doesn't have any history of sexual assault, because if she did, obviously they would bring up any dirt they can find. They are outraged. They don't have anything to use. Yeah. Manny from the Bronx. Hey, Sam, with the ongoing Russian war inspiring nations like Kosovo now pleading to join NATO, I do fear how upset that would make Vladimir Putin. I don't see a world war anytime soon, but the inevitability of Vladimir Putin, these nuts in your mouth. There you go. Yep. All right. Touche.
I like that.
Hello, touche. And the final IM of the day. Oh. Matt's Bong. The right simply doesn't accept the gender that trans kids identify as, and all they are doing is highlighting that in that context of sport. If trans girls were viewed as girls, they would be celebrated when they win swim meet, not criticized. So no, I don't give a shit one way or the other that some random girl wanted a sports happens to be trans. Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job today. See you folks tomorrow.
Me tomorrow and
me Friday.
Not Sam.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my